Welcome to the Mostly Potted at Night, and mostly, I am Salem, joined by my co-host Graveyard.
Hello.
This is episode 42 of our weekly All Things Horror podcast. Did someone order Italian? Join us as we go for round two with the Italian master of horror, Dario Argento. This week we'll be diving into some of his more memorable works, Deep Red, Inferno, Phenomena, and Opera.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, we're still into the thick of his stuff, right? And you know, he he is a good horror master, realistically.
well, that's why he's the Italian master of horror, see?
Yes, him and Fulci, but we haven't done Fulci yet. It's coming soon, though.
No. We'll get there.
Oh yeah, yeah. We have lots of planned episodes.
Okay, and we will start with a Deep Red, which is from 1975.
Yes.
And it shows a little bit. There's a lot of 70s fashion, a lot of 70s music,
Yeah.
a lot of 70s personality in this movie. It's definitely 75.
Is this the earliest one we've watched of his then?
I believe so.
So I thought Tenebra was 77, then we had Demons 1 and 2, which were
Tenebra
the
is
80s.
like in the 80s.
Yeah.
Suspiria is 77.
7.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, Suspiria would be the oldest one we watched before this.
Yep.
And if we ever get to the Animal trilogy, those
Yeah.
are his earliest stuff. Well, not his earliest stuff, but the earliest stuff that we'll do probably.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
But yeah, they were basically right before Deep Red. Anyway, so I'll go right into it. This plot does meander around quite a bit, so you have to forgive me if I get lost.
His plots seem to do that.
Oh, some of these are all over the place, but that's okay. So during the opening credits, there's kind of flashes of like a murder at a home. Like we see like Christmas themed type stuff. We see a bloody knife, and then we see like children's feet.
In stockings.
Yeah, and that's really it. I mean, it's just kind of an opening thing. It really doesn't matter until we get way later in the movie, but it does technically start with that. And then later after that time, we're basically in like an auditorium. And there's like these two guys. I don't know what we call them, handlers. I don't know what they are. Like kind of like business type people.
Well, this
Anyway,
is what wasn't this a council of like psychology?
I don't
It said on there.
I don't know what it was. I think they were there to they're the lady, because there's a lady between them. So it's these two guys and then a lady. And they're
Yeah.
basically just proving that this lady has psychic powers.
Correct.
And essentially it's all the people in the room are there are the people that are either like excited to see this or skeptics, because they apparently invited everybody because they wanted to just prove that she could do it regardless of who it is with.
Right.
So anyway, so yeah, she does like, her magic psychic thing, and she like, picks out a couple people from the crowd and tells them all kinds of stuff about their past, and they're all like, "Oh, this is great. She's, she really knows what she's doing. She really, is psychic." I mean,
You
then
have a
she's like,
long key in your pocket.
right, right. Yeah, so
I do.
everybody's impressed with her. And then as she's scanning the room, all of a sudden she starts, like, oh no, she starts like going into kind of like a shock almost, like screaming out. She's seeing basically blood and murder and bad, evil stuff.
Yeah.
So basically, somebody out in the audience is a killer. And they don't know exactly who it is. We see it through like his POV, as Argento loves to do. We see it through his POV. He just like gets up and well, or he or she, we don't know at this point, gets up and goes to like the bathroom while she's having her fit.
Yeah.
And by the time they calm her down and they go look around, like all the people that were in the general area she thought it came from, they're all gone. So essentially, she goes home to like kind of whatever, relax or get over it kind of thing. And so she like what she calls like her friend or something. I don't know what it is, but she's like calling a friend. And anyway, so somebody, the same person that she saw before, breaks into her apartment and kills her brutally.
Yes.
A whole bunch of stabs and stabs, and then she's trying to get out, and he smashes her head through the window, and then like basically like sticks her neck into the glass of the window. And as he's doing that, this guy who's just kind of like walking down the street, who's like talking to his drunk friend on the street, looks up and sees this murder happen. And so he runs up there to see, what he can see, and he goes in there, and he finds the lady, stuck on the glass. He, you know, pulls her body off, touches everything all over the crime scene, but doesn't see anything. Looks down, sees his drunk friend is still down there, and he sees a person in like a brown raincoat. I guess it looks just like a leather trench coat, but they keep calling it a raincoat. So,
Yeah.
and anyway, with the hat and the gloves and everything, so it's like a dark silhouetted figure. You can't see anything. But but he does walk right past his friend. So he goes, but the lady's obviously dead. So he goes down to ask his friend, like, "Hey, did you see that guy?" And he's like, "Yeah, I saw a guy," but he's too drunk to like give him any details. So he goes back up there, and the police are there now. And he talks to the police about, he's like, "Yeah, I saw the murder happen. Um, I went down to see if I could catch the person walking away because they had this brown raincoat. And then I came back up, and then now everybody's here."
Right. And he goes, this is where he goes to the hallway of pictures, right?
Well, this is right after that. This
Yeah.
is after after he talks to the cops about everything. And we get the goofy, like, little comical thing of like this journalist just like strolls in and
Yep.
just starts taking picture of everything, and nobody stops her at all. That is
Nope.
always like, oh, this is so funny. I don't get these police. Like, I know it's 19, and I know it's 1975, but like everybody is walking all over the crime scene, like, and like nobody is trying to do any kind of detective work in any way whatsoever. So yeah, so he basically like walks away from the cops, and he starts talking to this journalist lady. And that's what he says. He's like, "There's something off about, like, when I came in here before, like something's missing." And he's like looking around. He thinks it's like one of these paintings on the wall, but he's looking around, and he's like, none of these look like they were moved or missing. He's like, but I feel like something changed. Something is different from when I came in here right after the murder to now, and I don't know what it is. Um, and so essentially, he
Right.
goes on.
Yeah. I just had to mention it because it does play a plot point.
I was getting to it.
Okay. All right.
So yeah, at this point, the police exit the film.
They're done.
Yeah, they're done. They don't come back until way, way, way later. So this guy who is a pianist, his job is literally he plays the piano. He takes it upon himself to start investigating this crime.
Italian PI, piano investigator.
Right, right, yeah, by himself. Like, I mean, he kind of sort of allows the journalist lady to help him for a bit, but
Yeah.
like not for very long. He tries to work with her at the beginning until he sees that she released a newspaper article about him saying that he was an eyewitness that saw everything, like literally with his face on the front page.
He's like, why'd you
Yeah.
put my picture on the front
Yeah. And
page?
it's like, what the hell is wrong with you? So then he like, he kind of cuts her out. He's like, whatever, I'm gonna do this on my own.
Yes.
So he goes and he talks to his drunk friend again. He goes and visits him at home. His drunk friend isn't there, but his drunk mother is there. And he talks to her, and she's just like, she seems like she's got like dementia or something. She keeps like calling him the wrong name. She keeps saying, "You're the engineer, right?" He's like, "No, I'm a pianist." He has to say it like 3 times, and she just doesn't get it.
Well, in fairness, we don't know he's a pianist either because we never see him play the
Well,
piano,
he's
really.
said he's a pianist at least multiple times, and this
Yes.
literally the next scene is him playing the piano.
Yeah, I
So it's
know.
like we get there.
Yeah.
So yeah, so he talks to his buddy, Carlo, trying to like get information. I don't know what information he's trying to get out of him, but he's trying to talk to him about, what do you think about this whole thing?
Yeah.
He's basically just, I don't know, I'm drunk. That's it. So we cut to him. He goes home and he's, trying to write a new song. Um, because he's a pianist, right? So he's trying to make a new
Yes.
piano song. And the killer breaks into his apartment. Who he hears them, or he hears like weird music. It's like it sounds like children's music.
I don't remember. It is a certain song. I don't remember what the song was, but
I don't know. It's like
it's played
some
throughout the.
German. Yeah, it's like the
Yeah.
German child's song. I don't know.
Right.
But yeah, so yeah, as this person is like sneaking around his house because he sees their shadow a couple times. And he's like, sitting there playing piano with one hand while he's got like a statue he's gonna attack him with in his other hand. And then right when the killer is about to come in the room, the phone rings and it's like ridiculously loud. But I think it's just trying to jump scare you. So he jumps up and he like closes and locks the door. And then gets on the phone and it's his the journalist lady. And I guess this phone scared the killer away because he leaves. So he decides to kind of work with the journalist lady again, like, hey, now I'm being murdered. I need some help, so I'll let you help me. So then he basically, tries to, or I guess he must have recognized the song, the children's song, because the next scene is him walking. He went into like a music store and comes out with this like record of children's music. And he goes to the two guys that were like the handlers for the psychic lady in the beginning. And he
Yeah.
basically says like, "Hey, this guy tried to kill me. It's the same guy that killed your psychic lady. She saw like weird, like childlike energy or something, whatever it was." And he's like, and then this music was playing when he was trying to kill me. So there's some kind of weird child thing going on. What do you guys know about it? And so they tell him about some book that's about this haunted house, like a screaming child haunted house thing.
Yeah.
And this part gets a little fuzzy for me. I actually watched it twice because I was trying to figure out how it jumped from this scene to the next scene. I guess okay. Now he talks about the book, right? And he says, "Okay, you
Yes.
should go check out this book." So he goes to the library and he checks out the book and he's like reading the book, and there's a picture of a house in this book. And so he rips the picture out of the book. And then the next scene is him talking to the journalist lady on the phone, talking about how he needs to go talk to this teacher lady. And for like the life of me, I could not figure out like why is he trying to talk to this lady? Like I was like, I guess was she the writer of the book? I guess like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
it would it would it would
Yeah.
have been like a quick thing because he didn't say her name until after the book was shown. So like you would have to like remember the name on the book and then the next scene to understand that she is the author of the book. I guess it doesn't matter too much. I was just kind of confused at the time. I was like, I don't know
I'm
how
just
this
looking
went
it
from
up.
here.
Yeah, it says it literally says uh he rips out the picture planning to learn more from the book's author. So yes.
Right. But again, it's not like he doesn't go, I should talk to this author of this book. No, nothing. Nothing like that. Just cuts to
Wild
him.
assing conclusion.
Right. Yeah. It cuts to him talking like we need to go find this lady. And I'm like, why? Like, who is this
Right.
lady? Why are you looking for her? I guess, I just wasn't as detail oriented at that time, I guess. I guess if I would have seen the author's name, maybe I would have gotten it. Whatever. It doesn't matter. Because he goes to this author's house, who of course lives like in a rural area somewhere.
Yep.
And as he's on his way out there, the killer, I don't quite know why he attacked her at this time, but again, where the plot is leading us here. So he attacks her and he fills up the bathtub with really hot water. And then he drowns her in the hot water and like burns her at the same time. Like she's got these like nasty like blisters all over her face.
Clearly Halloween 2 got that scene
Yeah,
for the
right.
nurse's death from that.
Right. Yeah, pretty much. It was like very similar to that. So like it basically, and then he, stabs her, of course, for good measure.
Right.
So as she's like dying on the floor, we see her like writing something in the mist on the wall because obviously all the hot water is making everything foggy. So we see her like write something in Italian. I think she starts to say like "it is" or "it was," but we
Yeah.
don't see. And so yeah, he gets the so the guy, the pianist guy, gets there, finds her dead, like just casually starts looking around all through her house and stuff, and then leaves. And then he goes and talks to the other guys that he was talking to before, basically saying like, "Oh yeah, she's dead. That's a dead end." And then like later on, they're like, "Oh well, are you gonna call the cops?" And he's like, "No, they'll find her tomorrow."
Yeah.
So I was just like, "What is going on?" Like, I don't think Argento likes cops very much. I just don't think he wants them in the movie. So he doesn't even bother like telling him he found another murder victim or anything.
Now, is this the movie that we get to see where the maid's like, "Oh, I have to clean up all this blood. I don't want to be here after dark," or is it another
Yeah.
one? Yeah,
No, yeah, that's it. But yeah, because that's how he gets in. Is he
yeah,
when he gets in there, the maid is there. No, no,
right,
sorry. This is the marketing, the business guy that he was talking to. He
yeah,
goes back to the house to see if he can find out anything, because she's still there dead.
yeah.
And then when he gets there, yeah, the maid is there and she had found the dead body and called the police, but the police aren't there yet.
And she's gonna clean up the crime scene.
Right. And she's trying to clean up the crime scene. So she goes in there and turns on the faucet for the hot water.
Right.
And he like starts to see something on the wall. So then he turns on the tub hot water. And then he sees, oh wait, no, the cops were there because it wasn't her body anymore. It was an outline.
Yeah.
Whatever. Yeah. So he was there afterwards, but yeah, it was right around the same time. So he sees the fog on the wall and he sees, like he says, it was, this other person, whatever. So he tries calling the pianist guy. He doesn't get an answer. Again, he doesn't bother calling the police at
Correct.
all. And he just goes home and just sits down and like has a drink. Like, I don't know. Is he just waiting for the pianist guy to come home and he's to keep calling him once an hour? I don't know what the point of that
Well, he called the real cop, the real detective, the pianist.
was. Right. I'm just saying, like, okay, why don't you call the police? Like, you know who the killer is now. What are you doing? But yeah, so he just goes home and he just starts drinking. And I mean, okay, he does get like a knife out because now he's like worried. And then there's a very bizarre scene of this like automaton toy. I don't even know what to describe it as. It's like it's basically what's used in like all the marketing for the film, like the weird like child mask or toy mask that they use in all the advertising and stuff or the cover of the movie. That's the face of this automaton thing.
Right, and
Um,
we were discussing earlier that this is really where the Jigsaw got the idea of the doll riding the tricycle from in
yeah,
Saw.
I mean, because the same like white face. It's got like the weird like red cheeks. They're not quite the spirals that Jigsaw has, but they're
Rosy,
pretty
yeah,
close. Yeah, they're pretty close, and it's like got the freaky like scary face and
and he's
everything.
riding a tricycle too, right?
I don't know what he's doing. It's some kind of weird effect to where like his little legs are kicking, but like he's like flying up like towards him. I don't know what's going on. It's freaky though. It's weird.
Yeah.
So this thing is flying up at him, and he swings at it, hits it with a knife, chops its head in half, and it's done. Right. So like this automaton that's like all this marketing stuff is about is like the thing is literally in the movie for like 2 seconds,
Yep.
and then it's gone. And then as he's like going, oh, I guess I killed it. Haha, I won. Of course, he gets attacked and killed with his own knife by the real killer.
First, his like mouth smashed in on like the fireplace mantle corner,
Hmm. Yeah, all
and
these
then
deaths are brutal. Yeah,
yeah,
these are not easy deaths.
yeah,
um, and yeah, so at this point, the pianist guy doesn't have any more leads, so he's like trying to figure out, okay, well, I have this picture of this house. I need to find out where this house is. So he starts talking to like florists because there's like some kind of plants in front of the house that I guess are rare or something. I don't know how he knows that, but he does. So he starts talking to all these florists, and he's like, "Oh yeah, this is a very specific type of plant. Only comes from one island. Nobody grows it here because it doesn't grow well here. All these florists never did it. And then there's one florist that's like, "Oh yeah, I did that at this specific house. Oh yeah, this is a picture of it. Oh yeah, that's that. That's my house. Here's the address." So he goes there. The house is for sale. It's been empty for a while. So he gets like the landlord to give him the keys. There's a weird kind of subplot of the landlord's daughter is like a budding serial killer. 'Cause she's like sticking pins through lizards and like watching them die, and like I don't know. Then the dad gets real mad and like yells at her for it. I get this subplot goes nowhere, but it's very odd that it's even there. Anyway, so he goes in this house. It's like an old beat up house. And he's looking through it, and he ends up finding I guess kind of a wall. It looks like somebody plastered over the paint that was on the wall before.
Yeah.
And he finds a little bitty spot, and it looks like a drawing, like a child's drawing is on the other side of it. So he just starts like scraping all the plaster away. And of course, this picture is like pristine underneath all this plaster. But it's essentially like a picture of a child holding up a bloody knife next to a Christmas tree, and there's a guy with like a big hole in his stomach with blood and everything everywhere. So he's like, okay, like, this is the house that the killing happened in. I need to go find out like whose house this was. So he leaves, and as he leaves, we see another part of the plaster fall, and then there was another person there that he didn't see. That was all the way on the other side. That has like an evil look on their face.
Correct.
So he goes back to the landlord, and he finds out that the previous guy was like just some like German guy. And the people before that he doesn't know because he didn't, he hasn't been there that long. It was like at least 20 years ago. And he's like, okay. So he works with the journalist lady who's Gianna is her name. And they decide that they're going to go to this local school and look for drawings because,
Well, yeah, the caretaker's daughter, I assume, drew a picture that was like exactly like identical to
right.
what was
Well, yeah,
behind the plaster.
it was pretty much. And he's like, where'd you get this? And she said she was like organizing something in the archives room and she saw that picture. And so she liked it and copied it or something.
Right.
Yeah, so him and the journalist lady go to this school and just break in casually. And then they're like looking through all the archives and stuff. There of course there's a nice archive cabinet named drawings. So they're like, oh look, see, it's not that bad. It's just this cabinet. So they start looking, and then kind of like a off you know, just kind of off the cover mark. He's like, hey, should we call the police? They're like, and he's like, yeah, go ahead and call the police. I guess, yeah, we could tell them where we are. I mean, like, this is after they broke into the school and after he like ignored murder victims and has been just doing all this work on his own, not sharing any information with the police whatsoever. Yeah, sure, go ahead, call the police. So she goes off to call the police, and he finds the picture in the stack of pictures. Of course, he sees the name of who it is. He doesn't tell us who it is, but he goes to find the girl. There's kind of like a little standoff kind of fight thing, whatever. And then we find out that the person who drew the picture was his drunk friend Carlo. And then Carlo shows up with a gun this time. But he basically says, "Oh, I can't let you live now that you've found out about me. So now I have to kill you." And he goes to shoot him, and then of course the cops pop in the window and start shooting at Carlo. Carlo runs away, but they shoot at him a bunch of times, but they don't actually hit him. So he kind of gets away. So like, okay, now we know it's Carlo.
Yeah.
And, but as Carlo runs into the street, he gets hit by, or no, he doesn't get hit. The garbage truck has like a bunch of cables hanging off the back of it, and they like hook his leg. And
Well,
so,
first he gets sideswiped and like he got caught in the side of a moving train really fast and like got roughed up from the side and then got tangled up. I'm like, this is I don't know how you went from getting sideswiped essentially to that, but okay.
well, yeah. So anyway, he gets hooked to the back of this truck, and gets like dragged down the street like for a while.
Yeah.
And he gets like, yeah, they're like, he gets swung into like poles and walls and all kinds of stuff. And eventually they find out he's there, but by that time he's already way and at this point, they're like, okay, we found who the killer is. Everybody should be safe now. Um, we're good. So then he goes back to the original scene of the murder, the first murder, the psychic lady. And he's like, still like, I know there's something missing. Like there's another thing here. Something doesn't quite make sense. And this is I'll talk about this in a minute here. But basically he's like, oh, wait a minute. When I looked out the window and I saw the killer leaving, like Carlo was there. Like I saw them at the same time. So
Yep.
he's like, it's impossible for Carlo to be the killer, or at least the only killer. So he's like, okay, well, I'm going to go back to the only other clue I could remember, which was this painting that I thought was off. And as he's looking around, he figures out that it's not the painting that's off; is there's a mirror. And what it was is when he walked past the first time, he thought it was a painting because a person's face was in the mirror. And then later on, he was like, "Oh, it's missing now." But what it was is the killer was still in the apartment, and he saw their face in the mirror, but assumed it was a painting because again, the whole hallway is like covered with just portraits of people's faces. So it didn't really make sense, that it wouldn't be a painting. So basically, he goes, "Oh my god, oh, who is it?" And then he gets attacked by Carlo's mom, the seemingly old lady with dementia, comes after him and attacks him. And they basically find out that yeah, she was like involved in the whole thing. So Carlo was the kid in the very beginning with the sock standing next to the Christmas tree. But it wasn't Carlo that killed his dad; it was his mom that kills his dad, and then he picked up the bloody knife afterwards. So like the picture of him holding up the bloody knife with his dad with a big hole in his chest, and then again on the far left side of it is his like evil looking mom, which is what the pianist did not see because again he didn't go that far with the plaster. We didn't see that until after he walked away.
Right.
So yeah, she attacks him. They have like a kind of fight back and forth.
Scuffle. Yeah.
Yeah. She ends up getting her necklace stuck in an elevator. Like it's one of those old school, like, cage elevators.
Yep.
And her necklace gets stuck in the elevator. And then he hits the button for the elevator to go up. And the elevator goes up and literally decapitates her with her own necklace. Because her necklace looks like a chainsaw blade, to be fair. Like
Yeah, pretty
I'm not
much.
I'm not surprised that they cut through her neck because it looks like a chainsaw blade. But yeah, it essentially cuts through her neck and uh you know, yeah, she's dead, decapitated.
Yep.
um, so yeah, so then that's it, and then that I believe that's the end of the movie.
Yep.
And yeah, I'll just say it right away. I mean, this is the first time I've seen it. I think it's the first time you've seen it too, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm watching it.
All these movies are new to me.
Yeah, I'm watching this, and I'm like, man, like who do I think it is? And I kept going back to, man, I think it's got to be Carlo, right? He's like the only person that they keep like going back to that doesn't have a purpose in this movie. Like, there's no reason for him to be here at all. But again, I always went back to no, he looked out the window, he saw the killer and Carlo at the same time. It can't be Carlo.
Right.
And then again, when they were talking, like, when Carlo showed up at the school, and I'm like, okay, then it can't be only Carlo. He has to have a partner because again, he saw them at the same time. I'm like, I don't think he's gonna do like the it was smoke and mirrors trick because it doesn't make sense at this point. But yeah, I was just very confused. So like, yeah, I thought it was maybe Carlo, but again, that whole scene of like, no, he sees them both at the same time. It can't be. So yeah, that does. I mean, threw me off the whole time. Obviously that was the main point of it, but
Right.
and like, I mean, how are you gonna guess the killer? I mean, she like makes an appearance like literally twice in the whole movie, and she just acts like a drunk crazy lady.
Yeah. And I gotta say though, for and something that I noticed while watching all four of these is that we seem to think that the main protagonist is a woman in all of these. And eventually it goes, nope, it's a man.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple of them that just keep switching main characters,
Uh-huh.
and you're like, "Who is the main character?" Like, this what's the next one we're doing is Inferno, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Inferno is like, "Who is the main character? Quit switching characters because they keep doing that." It's like one person's the main character, and then they just cut, and then it's another person for a while, and they cut, and then it's another person for a while, and they don't go back to the other person. It's just it's done. It's like they moved on. It's like, what is going on?
Yes.
Again, it does make them interesting. It does make them more rich. It keeps you more involved because you have to like actually think about what's happening. You
I
have to
mean,
like pay attention.
I mean, Grant, like in all these, his cast of characters isn't very big, and so there leaves very little people left alive by the end of it. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Well, and usually the killer is not one of those people. But I mean, it's a person that has shown up in the movie, but they're like a very minor character. So like you can't really like you don't have enough information about this other people to like say it was them, right? Because like they were
Right.
literally in like a scene. Like, well, how the hell was I supposed to know? You're not supposed to know. It's not the point of the movie. Like they kind of play off as mystery. Like this one, it kind of plays off like a mystery, right? But it's really not because it's like you're not given clues to figure it out.
Correct.
You don't figure it out until the end.
It was kind of like Tenebra's the same way,
Yeah.
I
So
would
well, yeah,
say.
there was like there's things happening, and then you're like, oh, that was it. No, that can't be it. There's these clues that we found that make it can't be it, and then they show you why, and it's yeah, it's just kind of his pattern, I guess.
But I mean, overall, I mean, we'll get into highlights, but I mean, this wasn't a bad movie,
No,
and
not at
it's
all, not at all.
and once again, just like last time we did this, very pleasantly surprised by all four of these that show that we kind of missed out in 70s and 80s Italian horror, especially
Well,
from Argento.
yeah, but I mean, to be fair, this stuff is not easy to find. I mean, you'd have to get
No.
deep into the racks to find that. And, being at a regular, um, like a video store, right? Like
Yeah.
you're not gonna just find Argento stuff there. Like I didn't hear the name Argento until I was older and I got into a lot of like, of the deeper horror stuff. But
Yeah.
yeah, back then, yeah, I didn't nope.
Well, even now, luckily between Shutter and um Amazon Prime, we're able to watch these, and luckily, because usually it's dubbed in Italian first, but these are Shutter's great enough to be able to provide the essentially the English dubs of these things.
Well, maybe most of them were done in English. I mean, I'm sure
Yeah.
there's like early stuff was probably just pure Italian.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, I think Suspiria and then after because Suspiria is kind of a mix of languages. Like there's people that speak German, there's people that speak Italian, there's people that speak English. It's kind of a mix of them. But I think everything after that is mainly English. But yeah, some of them are dubbed over. I think because the people had really thick Italian accents. And so they wanted them to be like more normal-ish sounding.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, this is it definitely is to me. Like I said, we'll get to the ratings, but just saying right now, definitely worth um a rewatch even. Just because there's so much more to it. It is a you have to pay attention type movie. Besides a really one-off subplots that each of these seem to kind of have like these one-off stories just to seemingly make it longer. And these are almost 2 hours each.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily in there to keep it longer. I think it's just in there to add some spice to it. Just a little bit extra. You know what I mean? Like you getting just kind of interesting subplot things that are and not everything is driving the plot forward.
Right.
Sometimes it's just interesting stuff.
Yeah. But let's get into your highlights for this movie.
Highlights for this one is as it is for like most of his movies is the music.
Oh yeah.
This one is it's interesting because it is very 70s heavy. Like as most of his stuff is like, character is just kind of going about their own business, right? Just just whatever, reading a book, starting a bath, whatever. And it's very calm, and there's like no background music, no nothing's happening, and all of a sudden it's like boom, like a song starts playing really loud, and it's usually like a very loud, fast paced song. Like later on, it was like
Boom.
heavy, yeah, like heavy metal stuff, like whatever it is. It's like something crazy is happening, but the characters are not doing anything crazy. They're still doing their normal, run of the mill activities. And anyway, and the music in this one has got a very, very 70s heavy vibe to it, like that really heavy bass, and that
Oh yeah.
really heavy
Bum,
70s
bum,
vibe.
dun, dun, dun,
Yeah,
bum,
yeah,
bum. Yeah.
exactly. It's fantastic.
Oh yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, yeah, I love the music in this. I mean, there's a little bit more, obviously because the guy's a pianist, so there's like some piano music, and then the goofy, I don't
Yeah.
know, German nursery rhyme, whatever that was. They played it
That
a
song
lot.
was awful.
Yeah, that song was not great, but yeah, the rest of the music, like the actual like like death scene music that was pretty cool. I like that stuff.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I like the that automaton, even though it only was in it for like 2 seconds or 3 seconds, whatever it was. That thing was awesome. It was like
Yeah.
fantastic and scary as hell. I don't know what like. Okay, so we know it was either Carlo or his mom doing that, right? What the hell does that have to do with anything? What is that toy automaton even from?
Distraction? I
I
don't
guess I guess
know.
they were going with the whole like he's a childlike murderer, so toys are childlike. I think is the vibe they were going for. I don't know. It's just so bizarre and odd, and the way that it just like flies at the camera with its little legs kicking, it was it was the high point. I love it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I would say just the mystery atmosphere of it was interesting. Like I said, it's like a mystery story, but it's really not a mystery you can figure out. Like there's no clues that you were getting that's going to help you figure out who it is before the end. You're not going to get it. It's just not a thing that you can do, but you think you can.
Yeah.
And so you're trying to gather information, but it's just yeah, there's not enough there.
Yeah, I mean, for me, once you had the music, because I where was it Goblin at this point in time? Was that later in the '80s?
No, I was Goblin, but again, I
Yeah,
think this is early '70s Goblin, or like, of course, everybody's using that '70s bass at the time, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
We'd call it almost porno music at this point in time,
Well,
but
that's just
fast
'70s
pace.
music. Yeah,
I know,
'70s music is people assume it's all porno music, which, to be
right?
fair, it does
But
sound
it's
like
it's always like every action's like think of any '70s TV show, and it's that same type of music too. That like
Yep,
that.
yep.
Yeah,
That is very '70s.
yeah. I mean, yeah. It's he even in this atmospherically great. He I'm like he takes really I think he really is either lucky in his scouting process to see where he's shooting or has that much of an eye for the atmosphere.
I think he just has an eye. I think it was not only him. I think it was a lot of the people he was working with at this point in time.
Yeah.
That yeah, I think he just had a lot of things going for him, and that's why he is again why they call him the master of Italian horror. Is he just yeah he had a great eye for it. He could find those scenes and record them as well as he did.
Yeah, and we'll talk obviously for the very next one too. It's even better, but
Mm.
I mean, it's still like I said, music and which is the last time his atmosphere, his style, his everything is on point. Like he crafted this pretty well and has this formula pretty set up in his stuff that we've watched so far.
Right, right. And yeah, and I think this is the one that really like piqued a lot of people's interest.
Hmm.
Suspiria is really the one that made him who he is, or at least in the Western world, right?
Yeah,
But yeah, this one is really what put his name in the jar, right? And
yeah,
then this one put his name in the jar is like, oh, people are like, okay, that's interesting. But yeah, Suspiria was the one that blew him away, and that was the one where he really earned his chops. But I think this one's just as good, honestly.
yeah. What are your low points?
Low points is kind of like on the same themes. Well, one is the police. Like, what is happening with the police in this movie? Like, how do you not tell them like, oh, I found a dead lady? I'm gonna go tell anyone else except for the police that I found this dead body. Like he doesn't even give a reason why. He's just like, yeah, whatever, they'll find him tomorrow.
Right.
Like that's it. Like, okay. I mean, he like walks into a crime scene like he's the detective. He's a pianist. Like he has no detecting skills at all. And like the police are completely useless. And again, they're just not even there for most of this movie. Like all the things that he's doing with investigations and shit, if he would have been working with the police, it would have went like 10 times faster.
Yeah.
But no, he had to do it all on himself. It was just very odd. And it, like again, they needed like a shootout scene, so they called the cops after they broke into the school. And the
Right.
cops came in through the window instead of coming in through the front door, of course.
Well,
Um,
at this point, they're probably someone actually called us.
all right. Like, what's happening? So yeah, just the police and then the whole like impossible mystery thing. I mean, you can't figure it out. It's not
Correct.
possible. I mean, again, it's okay. But it's like as when I was watching it, I was like, man, who is it? Um,
Yeah, and that's very fair to these movies that we're really watching this week. Is yeah, you can't. There's no way to figure it out. Zero chance,
right.
and
Yeah,
that
this
definitely
you're not just not given enough clues. Yeah, it just doesn't
right.
happen.
So I mean, yeah, he's lacking in that aspect for sure.
Well,
That
to be fair, I don't think that he wasn't making a mystery. you know,
no,
he was. But I mean, what he did, he made a great horror movie, right? I mean, that's what he was aiming for, and that's what he did.
right,
But yeah, the rest of this stuff is yeah, he wasn't aiming to do a mystery movie, even though it kind of became like a murder mystery. But
right, yeah. So for out of 10 this week, we are doing ceremonial daggers because there's some sort of dagger in most of these movies. Just so that's what we're picking for out of 10. So how many ceremonial daggers out of 10 would you give this movie?
this movie, Deep Red, I will give 8 ceremonial daggers out of 10.
8?
8.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty damn good. Um, looking at the rest of this list, and I'm trying to figure out which ones I like more than the others to get my rating here. Uh, no, it is a pretty solid. I'll agree. 8 ceremonial daggers out of 10 for me as well. I mean, it just really we saw like that good introduction to Argento for anyone that hasn't seen him. From this being the earliest movie, this if you're going to start here, this is so far a fantastic starting point to get into
Yeah,
these movies.
right. Yeah. I mean, this one is again. If I was giving people, okay, this is what you should start with, it would probably be this. If you want to jump right into something that's extremely well known, go for Suspiria, which is the next movie he made right after this one.
Right,
Which is again, everybody knows that name. Well, in horror circles, they all know that name. But
right,
yeah, so I'd say yeah, either Deep Red or Suspiria. But if I had a choice, I would probably tell them to go Deep Red first.
yeah. All right.
And next, we're doing Inferno,
Didn't say that. No, yes.
which is what
1980.
1980.
Yes. All
Take it
right.
away.
Yes. So we'll just throw this out there right now. This movie is the second of the Three Mothers story trilogy. We have to wait, I think 27 years for the third one after this one.
Yeah. Well, yeah. The first of which being Suspiria,
Suspiria.
and then this one, and then yeah, he's like, I don't need to do another one.
Right.
Yeah.
And so even in that vein, it's considered a successor to Suspiria. And I'm throwing this right off the bat. It really shows because the color scheme is very reminiscent of Suspiria. So it seems like a next natural progression after Suspiria.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's that same use of color where it's like heavy color use. Like certain rooms are like skewed very heavy into one color. There's a
Right.
lots of like colored lighting and stuff like that. But yeah, very much like Suspiria, very much atmosphere, just like Suspiria.
Yes. Um so yeah, we start um off with Rose, right? And she's starting to open the book about the three mothers. Um, and she uses like the world's biggest letter opener to open like the first page of the book,
Yeah, I
which
don't
I
know.
never seen
Yeah, I don't
anyone do
know.
that.
Yeah, I don't know what's happening there. It was like, yeah, the first like two pages were stuck together, and she had to like cut them to open it. But it was like a really old book, so I was like,
Right.
I don't know what's happening there. I don't know. Maybe they were just stuck together. I don't.
Also, she sits in the weirdest possible way, kind of upright, leaning against a chair instead of in the chair reading the book.
You know, sometimes
Um,
sometimes ladies sit funny, and that's okay.
yes. So, and we have preface. This takes place in New York.
This
So
part of
we
it does, yes.
Yes. I mean, a majority. I mean, so the idea of the three mothers is there's one in Germany, which is what we got for Suspiria, one in New York, which we get in this one, and she starts reading this. It's in Latin, so we're getting like a voiceover for it, kind of reading it a little bit. And the third one is in Italy, and it took 27 years for him to make the one in Italy for the Italian filmmaker.
Right, yeah, which is ironic, I suppose.
Yeah. So she's essentially reading about alchemist. It was written by an alchemist who's talking about the three mothers who are also sisters, and kind of like uh the three hags of time. Where the three keepers of time, the three women.
Well, there, yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of different three sisters out there. There's like the three
Yeah.
sisters, the stars. There's
Yeah.
the three sisters in like pagan mythology, which is
Right.
yeah, the crone, the mother, and the maiden.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
The
mean, so
soothsayers.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of them. There's a lot of
Right.
three women figures, but yeah, one of those.
Anyway, so we this is when we actually get more knowledge about the three mothers. Essentially, we find out the mother of sighs is the one that's living in Germany, which we've already been introduced to in Suspiria.
Hmm.
We found out that the mother of tears is the Rome one, which is where we get the last trilogy one, and was the mother of darkness
Yeah.
is in New York. She starts reading kind of all these clues, like we learn about the first key. The second key is beneath the soles of your feet. So first and foremost, I want to say that for a poet in New York, world's biggest apartment. I mean, there's not apartments that gigantic in New York that someone that's a poet can rent. Let's face it. I guess it is an old house or old apartment too. So they always point that out too.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I mean, yeah.
yeah.
Well, I
Uh,
guess they also talk about in that book is he was an architect and he designed like their like castle buildings,
right.
which is where the three mothers live. They all have like their little castle building.
Right. The dance school in Suspiria was one of them,
Right.
and
And
they're
then
trying to figure out where this other one is.
right. And
She
then
doesn't know
there's
for certain.
right. Right.
But, we'll find out later on what it is, and we'll have to wait till we get to the next Argento to see what the Mother of Tears lives in. So anyway, she starts writing to her brother Mark, kind of saying, "Hey, I'm reading about this Mother of Tears. I'm kind of looking at these clues, and um, yeah." And she's like, "You have to come visit me." So she's very, very disturbed by whatever she's reading. I don't know if we ever get context because I only read like the first sentence of the note that she writes every single time. Um, so she seems to be very deep into this lore of this book, to the point that she goes to the antique shop, Chazinen's or something like that,
Hmm.
and knocks on the door. It's like I want to say it was like 1 a.m. Is probably very, very late. And she gets the shop owner, and he's like, "Oh, this is all fake. Only a woman would believe stuff like this. They're the worst of the readers for this type of stuff, or best, however you want to look at it." His quote, not mine. um, she's like, "I need to know about this. These clues. Like, there's this weird smell in here." It's like, "Oh, that's from the cake factory. You get used to it if you've been here as long as I have. The smell's always been here. So you just get used to it. So kind of like a sweet-ish smell, but yet like moldy and rotten at the same time, I would say. Would you agree that I mean,
Well, yeah, they're saying bitter sweet,
yeah,
so they're
right.
describing it. So
Decay of death with cakes. Yeah.
right, yeah. So it's like the stench of death with I don't know,
Cakes.
honey and cinnamon on it. I don't know.
Right. But yeah, this guy has two crutches. He's kind of obviously he has walking issues, but he's like, all right, it's late. Get the hell out of my shop. Which he invited her in just to tell her that and say, okay, get out.
Yep.
So and we get a very New York alley, but not quite, where there's like a 7-foot grate that is there that she's able to open, and then steps. It's like one of those attic ceiling drop down stairs where you open it and the stairs come down, but going beneath New York. And she just goes down there because she's trying to investigate whatever the hell's in there. So she's kind of using the clues in the book, okay, beneath the soles of my feet. She's just kind of like, would you say it's kind of like a collapsed area where there's like huge holes filled with perfectly clear water?
Well, yeah, but
Uh,
that's farther in. When she first gets in there, the first like room, it's like a big room.
yeah.
It really reminds me of like the kind of like downtrodden, beat down like old music venues in the city, like
Yeah.
where like punk shows are. So like
Yeah.
there's enough room for people to get in there, but the place looks like it's falling apart. That's
Right.
what it looks like. But it's like a rundown one of those with like a bunch of like old furniture with spider webs and stuff all over it in there. But it really
Yes.
reminds me of like one of those like, old music venues where you have to like go down some creepy stairs to get into.
I mean, shows are there,
Well, yeah,
like the green room. So I was like, where the green room would take place if it
exactly.
wasn't on a farmhouse.
Well, correct.
So yeah, then she kind of just goes through it, and then yeah, that's where she sees like the ballroom, I guess. And she's just trying to look into the water to see if she can see anything. And then her keys fall into the water and get kind of tangled up. And she's trying to reach in there. Her hand's almost there. And she goes, you know what? I should just take off my shoes only and then go into this perfectly clear water. And she kind of she goes completely submerged, sees her keys, tries reaching for them, they fall down even farther, and she's just kind of like in this whole other room. There's like candelabras, there's chairs, and there's a door somehow swinging open underwater, which generally doesn't work that way. Uh but she goes, okay, now they're even farther. So she has to go up, take a deep breath, and she like hold her breath for like 5 minutes at a time. It seems like
Maybe she was like an Olympic swimmer or something.
maybe, but like I said, perfectly clear water. And she goes down and starts exploring a little bit more. And then we get like a jump scare where the rotting corpse just happens to be there and kind of like she's stepping on it, hitting it. It seems like to be partially attacking her in some way.
It's just
Like
poking her.
it's just poking her, poke.
Yeah.
She's screaming. She gets her keys.
Okay, okay. If you were underwater and something was poking you and you looked and saw that it was a hand and a dead body, you would be upset too.
True, but I would never be underwater. So I mean, there's that.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't dive underwater in a basement of a New York City building that's like at least 100 years old. There ain't
Well,
no way I would do
and here's the thing that we'll throw this plot point out right now. Considering the landlord has extra sets of keys to the apartment, there's no reason for that because we find that later out when in the plot.
that. Well, yeah,
Uh,
but you
yeah,
don't want to lose your keys. I mean, if I lost
yeah,
my keys, I would try to get them back.
yeah. So yeah, so she leaves her shoes there after getting her keys. And she goes back to her apartment, and immediately suspicious of because she hears people talking. So she's trying to call the elevator, which is like one of the oldest elevators I've ever seen. And so she's kind of hiding from the people talking, and we get this very, very green and very, very red atmospheric stuff. So like I said, very atmospheric to Suspiria with different color tones, almost classic architecture too, right? Like very old school, like the Shining type hotel areas. Um, so I think that's not what. No, it's not what. Is that what happens next, or does she? No, it's not. Okay,
Well, yeah, she does her like, well, because yeah, it cuts her off before it cuts to
Mark.
Rome.
Yeah.
Right.
So we get into a music class where we get either the 20-year-old or 40-year-old Mark, her brother. Can't tell with his haircut and his stash how old he is, but he's a music student, and like 100 people in that all listen to the song that the professor is playing, and they're trying to read the music and study the song. And some woman appears, or his friend appears seemingly late to class, and they're not talking because they're trying to figure out what's going on there. And then Mark gets very distracted by shadowy eyed girl with cat who doesn't have headphones on and isn't paying attention to anything going on in the music class.
That is very Italian.
Yeah. Um, so he has his note from his letter from his sister, and he's starting to read it. Like the first sentence, he seems to be deeply disturbed, and then she kind of goes Carrie-ish on him, staring at him, petting her cat, and he starts getting this uneasy feeling. Wind starts blowing, winds open, and we get the point of view from over his shoulder to the back of his head for a while, back and forth between her, him over the shoulder, and just him feeling like very, very uneasy. And he seems to be deeply disturbed by whatever's in the note, which once again, I don't think we ever get told what's in there.
No, yeah, I mean, basically, it's like, "Hey, come to New York," and then I think she goes on to talk about the things that she discovered, but again, we don't really get to see that, and neither does he, to be
No.
honest.
So then, he's starting to class is kind of gone. He tries to go after Shadow Eye girl, and she's just like gone. He leaves his note, and his friend, I don't remember, is it Sarah? Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, she's like, "Oh, Mark, you left this note here. Oh well." And then it's heavy, heavy downpour, and she's going somewhere, and then she starts to kind of read the letter, and she's clearly disturbed by whatever it is. She's like, "Okay, I gotta go." Um, she's like gonna bring it to Mark, I believe. And then she's like, "Okay, I have to go to the library and see what the hell's going on about this Three Mothers book." And for this arcane, seemingly hard to find antique book, the library happens to have it at whatever time it is at night.
Well,
Uh,
I think she goes there specifically because she knows they have really old books.
okay, yeah, and so she starts to, she goes, "There's people in the library." She's trying to find it. Talks to the librarian. He's like, "Oh, the book's right behind you. Oh, how convenient." So she takes it and she's like, "All right." He's like, rings a bell, like, "We're closing, time to leave." And she's like ready to just take the book. So it seems like a library that you can't check out books. Like you have to stay there and read. Um so she is kind of hiding from the librarian who's closing up. She takes the book and kind of sees an exit, but goes down, like, I would say, a great stone staircase like you'd find in a castle.
Fair, yeah.
And she's trying to find her way out. She stumbles upon essentially an alchemist's lab. Was, was that that's the best way I can
Well,
describe it?
yeah,
Yeah.
an alchemist lab from like the Middle Ages.
Right.
Right. Yeah. We're not talking a modern alchemist lab. No, we're talking like Middle Ages, like complete with a monk in a robe. That's what like
Right.
it
And
looks
just
like.
boiling pots and just like cauldrons and all this stuff, like of like porridge, it almost looks like. And she's like, "Hey, I'm trying to find the eggs." Like, "Other door." Okay, and then he sees in the mirror that she has a Three Mothers book. He's like, "Oh," and goes to attack her. He's gonna try to shove her face into the boiling cauldron. She drops the book, which was seemingly okay, and that was a distraction enough. And she starts running away, and she gets caught on the door trying to escape through one of these doors. He almost catches her. She's able to get through, and she escapes back into her apartment.
Well,
Um,
before she finds Carlo in the elevator as just some random dude. And she's like,
yes,
"I'm afraid. Please come in my apartment with me."
I can't be alone
Okay,
tonight.
which is interesting because one, Carlo is the same Carlo from Deep Red, and two, Carlo is that guy's real name. So I'm pretty sure Carlo can't answer to any other name but Carlo. So
That's
whenever
entirely
he's in a
possible.
movie, yeah, whenever he's in a movie, his name has to be Carlo.
All right, Carlo, you're going to be someone else. Can I just be Carlo?
I'll be a different character, but my name's Carlo.
Right. So, and her blouse was torn. He just stares at her breasts very creepily, like right next to her, and she's like, "I don't want to be alone. Come join me, creeper." Okay, I have nothing to do for a few hours.
Exactly.
Um, yeah. So he is there. She's like, "Oh, I just need you to stay. I just need you to stay until Mark comes over." And she's calling Mark, say, "Hey, I got your letter. You need to come here immediately." Power starts flickering on and off, and Carl's like, "Don't worry, I got this. Where's the fuse box?" She's playing music. She says, "You may have heard this one before." And then we start seeing blood figures starting to cut off the heads of paper, line of paper people, and cut off their heads, and you get like a hanging scene. Or is that something else? That's
Um,
this, yeah,
yeah, no, the
right,
paper thing. Yeah, I don't think anybody
yeah,
was hanging though.
no. Um, so she's like, "Oh," and Carl's like, "Don't worry, I think I got it." And she goes there, and all of a sudden he's comes out with a knife all the way through his neck.
Yep.
Still alive, and like falling on her and climb on her for help, and she just can't get off of him. Uh, and then she kind of goes through and tries to escape, and then she gets stabbed in the back,
Right.
and then she doesn't get. Uh, oh, is this where she get? This is where she gets uh guillotine, right?
No, that isn't her.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
I thought it was her.
No. Right. Well, right. Okay. So what happens
Oh,
is
this
yeah,
is
she
Rose
gets
that half.
yeah,
Yeah,
right. Yeah, she
she
gets
gets stabbed.
stabbed. Yeah, he pulls the knife out of the dude's neck, stabs her
Yeah,
in the back, and then we cut to Mark coming into the apartment. And then there's this weird scene of like this fabric is like draped over the hallway, and
yeah.
then she like Sarah claws through the fabric and falls dead in front of Mark.
It's like a mixture. It's not the Japanese paper doorways, but yeah, it's like a weird fabric.
Right.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if it was like put there for effect or what. I don't know, but
I
it
don't know if it's
looks like it
supposed to
was
be
just there
like
for effect.
I don't know if it's supposed to be like a wall.
I don't know. I don't know what happens, but then it like cuts to Mark going, "Oh, that sucks.
Yep.
Hey, look, here's some pieces of my sister's
Yeah.
thing," and then it like literally cuts to him back home talking to his sister on the phone.
Yes.
So he's like, "Oh no." Anyway, and he just
Yeah.
leaves, and then he's talking to her on the phone, and then the connection's really bad. And he can't understand what she's saying. All he can hear is that she says, "You need to come to New York. You need to come to New
Oh,
York."
that's what it's like the same night,
Right.
but
Yeah.
in New York. Which I'm sorry, I don't think it's nighttime the same times in New York and not New York where
Well,
he's at.
exactly. Exactly.
Um.
But yeah, but
Okay.
then it cuts back to Rose, and then that's yeah, go ahead.
Yes. Okay. So yeah, she sees people enter her apartment, and then she starts going through like all of underground New York.
Essentially, yeah.
Like, oh, let me just go through these 20 different causeways and pedways and stuff like that. And she's being followed this entire time. And then she's looking by. She's like in this old place, and all of a sudden the hands come out from like through a window, I would say,
Hmm.
and claws. These are like creepy claws, right?
Yeah, they look like lizard man hands.
Right. So, it's like scratching her face, and it's like, oh, there's this we call like a metal shutter. I don't know what it was supposed to be. I don't. It wasn't
I
glass.
think it was just supposed to be a piece of glass. It wasn't, but I think it was supposed to be.
Okay, because it
I
did
think
seem
they
like
were
glass.
basic. Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. It did not it did not seem like glass, but I think it was supposed to be. Because I think it was painted to be kind of the color of like frosted glass, but it was definitely
Okay.
not glass. But yeah,
Yeah.
it was. So they essentially it was like whatever it was painted to look like a glass guillotine. Is what it
Yeah, and
is.
then it took multiple chops of that to decapitate her.
Right. Yes.
Anyway, then Mark happens to show up in uh New York to her apartment. And we meet a nurse with an elderly gentleman who can't seemingly talk. And he meets the landlady and he goes, "Hey, I need to go visit my sister. Oh, she's on floor four, room 49 or something like that. Here's the keys. Are you going up? Are you going up?" So he meets this nurse caretaker. He's like, "Oh, he likes you," and he's like poking at his like portfolio,
Yeah.
whatever, right? Um, yeah. So he goes there. He goes into the unlocks the door. Oh, something to note that her inside glass doorknob was broken. And she had cut Rose had cut her hand on it. So we see that happen. So she's bleeding, and then Mark almost cuts himself as well. Um, all of a sudden, she starts hearing a voice coming from like everywhere in the apartment. And he opens the door, and it's our this is Daria. Yeah, that's in every movie.
Yeah, Daria
Yeah,
Nicolodi, or yeah, because yeah, she's like basically Argento's partner for like all of the '80s.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
all of his good movies. She's essentially his partner for all of his good movies. I think
Right.
her first appearance is in Deep Red, and
Yeah.
her last appearance is in Opera.
Right.
So it's like what 12-year span.
Yeah. So anyway, she's what seemingly sick. They don't say what she has, but she's like, "Oh, my husband's out of town. I'm her friend. She was telling me about this book." And they start talking about it. And then like she's like, "Oh, I'm just waiting for a phone call." And then like her butler, because these apartments are big enough they need butlers and maids. Um, and it's
Well,
like,
to be fair, she's a countess.
okay.
She is very very rich.
And like you just go there and she's like sees marks on her feet. It's like, "Oh, it's not blood, it's paint." Oh wait, it was blood. And they see blood stains from her cutting herself on the doorknob. And we get a little bit backstory about the countess and her creepy guy who's running her bath. And she's like, "Okay, you can leave." Uh, and then Mark starts to follow the blood trail, essentially,
Hmm.
knowing that his sister was there. And he, what happens? He just seems to like get knockout gassed.
Yeah, essentially. Yeah, I mean, yeah, he like goes through like the weird area that Rose was in
Yeah,
when she got attacked, and he gets in there, and then yeah, he essentially gets amnesia gas or whatever, and then falls
right.
down.
Yeah. And then the countess happens to see him getting kind of dragged away. Uh, and then what? She starts getting chased, and she gets what? There's a lot of cats in this.
Yeah,
um, yeah, and then she what? Seemingly gets attacked by cats and then stabbed.
yes,
Okay,
yes. That's essentially
I'm trying to remember
she
what
gets
happens.
attacked by cats,
Right.
and then as she's being attacked by cats, that she gets stabbed to death.
Yeah. So Mark gets staggered and like, "Oh, it's his heart. Get him the heart medicine."
Right. Yeah. And then the next
Oh,
morning he wakes up and he's like, "Oh, I don't remember what happened at all." And she's like, "Oh, it was your heart." He's like, I
I
don't
don't
have a
have a
heart
heart problem.
problem. And he's like, oh,
Well,
that's
it
okay.
gave
We
you
gave you heart medicine.
what?
Yeah, I would have been like, what do you mean heart medicine? What does that mean? What are you
Right.
giving me? But no,
Oh,
he's just like,
there's
okay.
only one heart medicine.
Yeah.
I guess. I don't know.
He's just like, all right, okay.
Yeah, Mark's not very bright in this, I would say. Um, so anyway, he gets found out that, the antique uh Kaznanians found out, sold the book, starts talking to him, and essentially he says, no, I got nothing for you. It's just, all this is just a old wives tale, essentially just a story from a crazy man. None of this is real. And it seems like he seems to know what's going on. Kazanin, right?
Yeah. I mean, he's probably read all the books. I'm assuming he had like multiple copies of the Three Mothers. I'm assuming he's probably read it.
Right. And then he goes, oh, by the way, there's me eclipse of the moon tonight. You should check it out.
Right.
Which only comes to play for what's coming up next. They do focus on the moon a lot in this, kind of opening shots of the moon, like zoom in on the moon, kind of at the beginning and kind of at the end. Um. Anyway, we follow Kazan a bit. He's surprisingly doesn't have the most luxurious apartments in New York. He just kind of lives in the shop.
Yeah, he lives in like the boiler room
Right.
in his own shop.
Anyway, he's found out, there's more cats. Cats keep knocking over his stuff. He talks to the landlord of the apartment, like, oh, they're disgusting. She's like, do something about it, which I don't know what she's supposed to do about it, but okay.
He's
Um,
just an old man bitching at whoever's nearby.
yeah. So he's finds a cat, picks it up, and starts scratching him. So he knocks it unconscious. And you find out he has a bag full of cats. And he goes, "Okay, I'm gonna go drown it in, I guess, Central Park."
I don't know. The swamp?
I,
The New York swamp? I have no
right,
idea where this is supposed to be.
right. So yeah, he's trying to drown him. He's like in like ankle deep water. He's like, "Oh, this would be good enough," and starts shoving it into the water with his crotch. Which, look, this isn't deep enough. And in the background, we see the world's open latest hot dogs food truck,
Now,
right?
okay. Now here's the thing. This is the best part of the movie.
Yeah,
This is by far the best part of the movie. So he's trying to drown these cats in like, an inch deep of water, which is not
right.
happening. But the cats just keep squealing louder and louder and louder. So
Yeah,
he keeps going deeper and deeper into the swamp to try to find water deep enough to put the cats in. So he finally finds a spot deep enough. He pushes the cats under, which is horrible. But then he falls over in the water.
which
And
is not even halfway up his body,
right.
falling over.
Right. He fall over in the water, but because his legs don't work, he can't get out because he loses his crutches.
Right, and then
Um,
rats start chewing on him. He calls,
right.
"Help, help!" And then the hot dog vendor comes out with a knife, starts charging. And he couldn't see him at
Well,
first because of the eclipse.
here's the thing. He's like, help me! I'm being eaten alive by rats." Okay, they focus on the hot dog guy. He goes like, "Oh, this is my time to shine. I'm the hero!"
Right.
Right? He
Yeah.
grabs his hot dog knife and he starts running down there. There's like this long scene of like him
Yeah.
running, like, oh, he's gonna come and save this old man. He gets to the old man, he just goes thunk, and
Into the back of his neck and
just
kills
he
him.
straight up stabs this old man to death and then drags him over to the pipe that all the rats are coming out of and just throws him at the rats
And
and
drops a
walks
knife,
away.
and that's it.
That is the hot dog man is the star of this movie. That is like by far the best part.
And no explanation
No, there's
as to
nothing. There's
what
no
he
point.
did,
There's
why he
no
did.
point to this scene at all, but it is fantastic.
Yes.
Just the you have to see the hot dog man running. He's like
Yes.
running like he's the hero gonna save somebody, and he just runs over and stabs him. The hot
I'm
dog man is
sad.
never mentioned again. No one
Nope.
ever talks about the hot dog man. No one ever even mentions this guy or knows that he's missing.
Correct.
It's
Just
great.
a random ass scene that he threw in there just
Right.
to,
So,
I
yeah, just
really
to
think,
get
just
rid
another
of.
body count, yeah.
Well, I think he was like, okay, we got nothing else for this Kazanian guy to do. What else can we do? Hot
Hot
dog
dog
man.
man.
Right. I don't get it, but it's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, so, Anyway, yeah, so back at after that brief intermission from Hot Dog Man and the Swamp,
Right.
um, so we get back to the building. We see uh that the Countess's butler is trying to take advantage, like stealing all her money or her jewelry and stuff like that. Um, Essentially, he's talking to the maid, or no, the ho- uh hotel super, I guess, is the best way to, or apartment super.
Yeah, yeah.
I guess it's run like a hotel. I keep saying hotel because there are just like keys hanging to the whole apartments behind the desk.
Right. Yeah.
um, so like, oh, we're finally get out of here. So the butler goes around, is like, all right, I'm gonna get some more stuff. And he's like not coming back. So the apartment manager is trying to find him, lights one candle, finds his eyes just gently ripped out and
Yeah.
hanging from his
Yeah,
eyeballs,
just
and he's
tugged
dead.
out just enough to be on his
And just
cheeks.
left that, what, yeah,
Yeah.
just like that. She screams. Um, and what happens then? She drops a candle, starts a fire, and she kind of starts trying to put it out. And all of a sudden, like the draperies seem like spring to life and drape over her, and she catches on fire, falls through the window, falls through a skylight, and falls essentially into that secret floor where the punk show took place.
Right.
And the building starts catching on fire. Um. Anyway, so while that's going on, Mark kind of like finally realizing the key is beneath the soles of our feet, and he's just kind of going through there. And he's like, "Oh, there's ants coming through this hole in the ground. Okay, let me uh drop something in there." Didn't come out. He just finds like a wire hanger that he straightens up and puts in the hole, and he didn't hit anything. So then he puts a spray in there to kill all the ants, and then he starts chipping away. First he pries up the floorboard with the ceremony dagger book opener, letter opener,
Right.
and then sees this hole and starts. Then all of a sudden he has like a crowbar out of nowhere and starts chipping away at the concrete. I wouldn't be standing over it in a hole that you're making, not knowing what's beneath there. I would
Wow.
just throwing
I mean,
this,
it's
you
not a
know,
good idea to be hitting anything in a old building that old.
right. So then he goes, "Hey, a hole. I'll just go through here because that seems what everyone's modus operandum in this movie. He says, I'm gonna
Well,
climb
to
through
be
this
fair, he
hole."
stuck his hand in there first and was like, "Oh,
Yeah,
there's some stuff in here," and then just jumped in.
yeah. So then he kind of goes through this winding hotel, secret passages, and eventually he finds the guy, the old man who's there, who's hooked up because he can't speak, was hooked up to like speaker system. Is like, oh, I was the alchemist. I built all this stuff. And, kind of Mark figures out that the apartment he's in is one of the mansions built for the mother of darkness. Um, so yeah, so he kind of just goes, and they get somehow the old man starts attacking him, tries ejecting him. He gets tangled up with his own. I don't know what to call this technology.
Well, it's like, what do you call those things that like the people that have laryngectomy like
Yeah,
use to
hooked up to a
talk?
speaker.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah,
one of those, but like a '70s version that needs like a whole freaking computer the size of a desk to work.
right.
That's what it is.
Yeah. So he ends up, you know, essentially being died, that there's people watching him, all this stuff. He kind of starts to turn around, and boom, it's the nurse is the mother of darkness. And I am death. And while the buildings burning around, they kind of have a very short scuffle,
A kerfuffle.
kerfuffle. Like he's like, haha, she turns to like death itself. He's like, oh no, and he runs away, and then the fires consume, and the debris. She stands there while the building collapses on her. At the end,
Exactly.
yeah. Uh, so I'll go into my first thoughts. Was for a spiritual successor to the second mother's story, this is a pretty damn good follow up to Suspiria in that lineup. Visually fantastic. So, going to highlights. Visually fantastic. Music's on point, and it seems like just like a perfect sequel to Suspiria. Something definitely I want to watch again. There's a lot of interesting points, and it's interesting that we get kind of the lore of the Three Mothers in the second movie, um, as a whole. But it's still interesting. Like, I believe the Three Mothers is based off of a story itself, and Argento kind of made it his own.
Right.
Um, yeah, I mean, was great. The scenery was fantastic. The lighting was fantastic. The architecture was amazing, and we also had kind of just like, we had, you know, the first month. The mother of sighs was essentially a witch. The mother of darkness is essentially death. Um, I mean, I am excited for the third one. I don't know how good it will be being as late as it is in Argento's career. But no, this is definitely worth a watch. And I was very pleasantly surprised by this. How about you?
Yeah, no, it was great. Yeah, I mean the high point is, yeah, I mean the music again. Obviously, this one had a bit more of a traditional score
Yeah.
than he normally does. I mean, there was some of that, Argento kind of, goofy synth music thrown in there, but not nearly as much. This one was a lot more traditional. And I know there was
Yeah.
like, he was like a music student, so there was a lot of like classical music for that reason specifically, but it just seemed like there was a lot more of that traditional score in this one. But again, all done well. Yeah, like you said, the color, the atmosphere, outstanding. I mean, yeah, great. I mean, again, we talked about how great it was in Suspiria. It's great in this one too. You can tell it was a
Yeah.
big focus of it. But yeah, by far and away, the biggest highlight of this movie is the hot dog man. I could watch that part over and over. In fact, I did. I think I watched it 3 times because I thought it was fantastic.
I mean, that is a great cosplay if you ever go to horror conventions. So you're the hot dog man
The hot dog man.
from Inferno.
Yeah.
Yes. I think you could pull it off.
Now rolling to my low points here. The low points was in the beginning of this movie. I don't know what was wrong with Rose and Sarah, but they were both seemingly like completely unbothered by water.
Yes.
Like Sarah just like, oh, whoops, I guess I'll just jump into this water. I mean, fully clothed, like didn't even bother, like, I don't know, taking her freaking shirt and dress off. She was wearing
She
like a
took her
floor
shoes
length
off.
dress. She was wearing a floor length dress, a pleated
Yes.
dress, and just jumped into the water with it. It was bizarre. And it was like, again, it was billowing all around her anyway. So it's like, it's not like she was, being modest and covering anything. I don't understand whatever.
Right.
And they're like completely unbothered by water. And then Sarah was like, it was pouring rain and she just like standing there
I
and
expected her
getting
to get hit by
soaked.
I
Right.
expected her to get hit by a car.
Right. But she
Quite
was just like
honestly.
standing there getting soaked, just like thinking to herself, like, what should I do? Should I do
Right.
this? Should I do that? And
Yeah.
she's just getting poured on, soaking wet. I do have to say the continuity guy for this movie was great though, because she stayed wet the whole rest of the movie.
Yes.
Like, which is very rare in a movie because usually it's like the next scene they may be a little bit wet, but then the scene after that they're totally dry, like it never happened. And this one, it was like every scene after this, she was wet the whole time. So like the continuity guy was on point in this movie.
Yeah.
And then the other bad part was obviously the cats in the bag, man. Like it was like disturbing. That scene went on for way too long. The cats were like meowing and screaming the whole time, and then like when he puts them in the water, they like scream like
Gargling.
yeah, it was like gargling and it was like higher pitched, and it was like it
Yeah.
was disturbing. Like what is going on? And again, there's no point to the scene.
Nope.
Why do you have to show drowning cats in this scene that's pointless? Like the hot dog man part was great. Why does the cat in a bag have to be there?
That's probably a good 15 minutes.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's that long, but it felt like that long. I was like, what
Right.
is happening? Why is this going for so long?
Right.
But yeah, no, yeah, the cats in the bag upset me. I did not like that. Again, that's why I felt was like so happy when the hot dog man just came over there and chopped them because it was hilarious.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
No explanation, though.
But
It
yeah,
was
no. If you watch this movie, cheer for the hot dog man.
absolutely. Um, yeah, low points, Let me think about this. I, I I'm gonna say the same thing. Is that you thought that Sarah, not Sarah, Rose was gonna be the main protagonist? Nope,
Yep.
Mark.
Well, okay, yeah. It's first it's Rose, and then it
Yeah,
switches to Mark, and then it
yeah,
switches to Sarah. And it's not like they're only like for a second. No, it's like whole scenes. Like
yeah,
Sarah is the main character for like a good what 15 minutes.
yeah,
I mean, it's a long time. Like she goes through the whole library scene, the whole like alchemical laboratory scene, the whole like her apartment scene with Carlo and then getting murdered. Like all of that takes a significant amount of time. And
yeah.
then it just cuts to Mark again. And then it like cuts away from Mark. And then the Countess was like the main character for a while.
Yep.
Like Mark was knocked out, and then it was like the Countess was like the main character for like 10 minutes. And then it like comes, but but again, it's just so weird how they jump back and forth like that. It was weird.
Also, a very anticlimactic showdown with the Mother of
Yeah.
Darkness.
Oh yeah. Oh, I'm the
I'm deaf.
mother, but I'm also death. And she like comes out like literally looking like Grim Reaper, and Mark's like, oh, that's
See
cool.
ya.
See you later. That's
Right.
it, and done. Like it's just over. There's no no confrontation, no fight. He just leaves.
I mean, fairness, he did get the heart medicine, so maybe
Right.
that gave him some sort of, uh, I don't know,
I don't know. He's immune. He's
protection
immune
from.
to panic, or he's immune to fear. I don't know.
I I don't know, but his most of his acting was looking very drowsy. That was his role in this movie. But yeah, the heart medicine was absolute. I'm just like, if I woke up, he'd be like, "What the hell did you give me?"
Yeah. If I woke up and I was like, "What happened? I can't remember anything." Oh, it was your heart. What do you mean it was my heart? Are you a doctor? Like, how did you know it was my heart? Oh, you said it was your heart. What the? I'm not a doctor either. Why the hell would you listen to what I'm saying?
Yes,
And then they're like, "Oh, don't worry, we give you heart medicine." Why would you give me medicine? You don't know me at all.
right. That's yeah, that is a weird plot point, I would say.
Well, yeah.
All right. So number of ceremonial daggers out of 10. I thought this was a fantastic. I mean, it is at almost as good as Suspiria. I don't remember what I gave Suspiria, but I'm giving this movie 9 ceremonial daggers out of 10
You
because
gave
I
you
really
gave
enjoy it.
Suspiria 8.5.
Okay, well then 8.5 it is. It's as good.
Okay.
What about you?
Um, I will give this one 7.75 ceremonial daggers out of 10.
Was it the ants that gave George dropped it down 0.25?
I didn't like the ants. I didn't like the cats in the bag. No, I mean I like this one a lot. I just don't think it was quite as good as Suspiria was. It's
Okay.
close. It's definitely close. It's worth rewatching, obviously.
Oh, absolutely.
I just don't think it was quite as good as Suspiria. It's close, not quite there.
No, it definitely makes me want to watch the Three Mothers trilogy in its own, just as a trilogy, like one after the other. I'm probably gonna do that at some point in time, just because I want to see how it really builds up. 'Cause it's been what, a couple of months since we did the last ones.
Yeah, I mean we could do it at some point, I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, no, it was. I think it was as good as Suspiria. No, you're right. It wasn't as good. So 8.25. There you go. Okay. I know you're excited for the next one we're going to be discussing.
Okay. There's a lot of mixed feelings about this one.
And this is why I decided I was going to take the recap for you.
I st-
Because anyone that listens to this podcast knows that Salem has a great love and affection of bugs.
yeah, oh yeah.
And Phenomena is about bugs.
Yeah, it's a lot of bugs. There's a lot. There's like half the movies about bugs.
Yes. So I know how much you enjoy it. I do want to say that you probably do want her superpowers.
Yeah, if I could make him get the hell away from me, it's gonna
If
be
you had that,
awesome.
right, right. If you had that type of control, you'd be like, all right, bugs, be gone.
Yeah, I control all bugs in my area to leave and don't come back.
Yes. All right. So Phenomenon came out 1985, which was a year before Labyrinth. I think Labyrinth is 86. So we get a very young Jennifer Connelly. We
Yes,
get
I looked it up. I think she was 15.
yeah. We get a very old Donald Pleasance because Donald Pleasance was very old in everything that
Well,
we've
yeah.
watched him in.
To be fair, yeah.
Yeah. So it starts off what in a Swiss countryside. You can tell because it had the Swiss flag about a young tourist who misses her bus, and we watch her take the bus or miss the bus, and then she goes, "All right," and just kind of stands there.
Okay, now here's the question. The first question right off the bat: what the hell was she doing to miss the bus?
I
There's
don't know.
nothing around. It's like
Yeah,
literally forest and fields. Like, what the
right,
hell were you doing to
correct.
miss the bus?
Yes.
Whatever. Bizarre.
Yeah, we don't know why she's there. We just know that she is there, and maybe she's taking a poo. I don't know, but somehow she misses the bus as a tourist, which is a fantastic way to, tour. Um, Essentially, then she's like, "All right, I'm gonna go walking and try to find something." I don't know what she's trying to find, but she's trying to find help, I guess. Um, and she's kind of walking through like finds like a cottage on the side of a river, I would say. And then she kind of gets attacked and beheaded.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, if there was a little bit of a scene where something was chained to a wall.
Oh yeah,
And
and it's
and
and it
we
rips
yeah,
out. Yeah.
right, and as we see her walking around the house, we see whatever it is chained against the wall, like, freaking out and yanking the pins out of the wall.
Right.
I mean, not that that really does much, but we
Nope.
see it was something, some kind of whatever monster thing.
Assumingly monster, yes.
Well, whatever,
Yeah.
monster, either physically or mentally, yes.
Yeah. So yeah, so we get that, then we get cut to Donald Pleasance, who's in a wheelchair being interviewed by once again inept cops or detectives.
Mhm.
They go, "Hey, we find out that Donald Pleasance has a chimpanzee as a nurse. He scolded because they found a scalpel. It's like, where'd you find this? And it's outside. And he finds just a scalpel outside, sharp, cut. See how sharp it is? And he could barely cut through the paper with the scalpel.
Yeah, he had to try really hard,
Yeah.
and it was probably
Uh,
pre-cut.
exactly. And he still had a really hard time showing how sharp this really sharp scalpel was by not being able to cut through paper.
Right.
Um, and so, she's my nurse. She takes care of me. Look, I have this little remote with a laser. She gets what I want. But teaches Ingra,
The
if I
monkey?
remember Inga,
Yeah,
yeah.
something like that.
And then he's talking to the cops, and he goes like, he has this something beneath a drape that we don't know exactly what it is. But he's talking about like, you can, what, how do you, and he sees this decayed head. I'm assuming of the missing tourist girl.
Yeah.
Um, And he's like, okay, well, you can how long has this been there? And he's like, okay, based on the life cycles of bugs, what there's 15, no, 8 classifications of bugs that each are there for 15 days. And depending on what type of bugs are on the remains determines how far along in that process that's been there. So you can go back, okay, if it's been 15 days per thing, it's 8 stages, that it's about 3 or 4 months, and then it's like, okay, so it's like, all right, it was this exact day, based on being found in the water when it came out of the water log. And he's helped, apparently helped the cops before on bodies to see how long it's been there. Like, hey, that lines up with when this, like, the exact day lines up when this girl was reported missing. It's like, okay, cool, thanks for your help, bug guy.
Right.
um Yeah, essentially, that's I think all that's really of note in this point in time. Although there's been missing girls ages about 14 or 15, a couple of them now.
And
Um,
one of them was Donald Sutherland's assistant.
research assistant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Donald
Um,
Pleasance, not Donald Sutherland. Donald Pleasance.
yeah. So then we get to a then we get Jennifer Connelly being in a car. She's being dropped off at a boarding school. This is all in Switzerland, I believe, right?
Correct. Zurich.
Zurich. She's like, oh, her dad's this famous actor who we never see
Nope.
at all.
You
But
know
he's just a
what a funny
famous American actor. Actor.
funny thing was is that Argento was trying to get Al Pacino to be the guy that was the famous actor, and it was supposed to be the real Al Pacino, like it was supposed to be Al
Oh,
Pacino's daughter. But since Al Pacino had a daughter, and it didn't, he's like, I don't want to be like my daughter in the movie. That's not my real daughter. Like that doesn't make sense. So he told him no.
right.
But
Wow,
like that was his original plan was to try to get Al Pacino to be this fictional actor in the movie.
interesting. So anyway, she's Jennifer Connelly. She is Jennifer because once again, just keep your name. That's your name. Um, so she finds out that here's her room. And we get introduced to a very French girl. You can tell she's French because she's smoking.
Of
Um,
course.
I am French, therefore I smoke.
Well, she did have a French accent too, so
Oh,
that
I know,
kind of
but
gave it
yeah,
away.
right. And she's like, "Oh man, I haven't eaten anything since breakfast 2 days ago. What you got?" Well, I have this old baby food from my parents came to visit with my baby brother. It's expired, but you can eat it. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And she starts
I'm
eating it with
not, I
her
don't want
two
to eat the
friends.
meat flavored baby food because I'm a vegetarian. I'm like,
Right,
oh, what?
right. That
Like,
was it. It's
you're
good.
already eating baby food. What difference
Right.
does it make?
Yeah. So she's like, okay, and there's like, then the Frau comes in. Oh, you're not supposed to have food in here. Takes it away. Also, she had like a poster of her dad, and the French girl was like, oh, did you lay in bed with him? I'm like, you're 14 years old.
Well, yeah, but not only that, but like, why would you have a poster of your dad?
Correct.
That's just so weird. It does weird. I don't care who your dad is. Like, if your dad is a famous person, I don't think their children are going to put posters of their dad on their wall. That's just
You don't
weird.
give a crap about your if you're
Right.
famous.
Like, you see them all the time. Why do you need a freaking poster of them?
Right. So she's like, don't worry, I have more posters. I'll hang them later. Tee hee hee. And then essentially they get ready for bed. And she's like, oh, there's girls being murdered. I don't think I'd be able to sleep because of it, but I won't be able to. She's like, well, I'll think of my dad's movies and my, stuff like that, and I'll be able to go sleep. And the French girl is like, if I think of your dad, I won't be able to go to sleep.
Yeah. It's like, thanks,
Um,
French girl.
right.
Just slow your roll a minute there. It's my first day.
Right. She's like, do you mind if I watch TV? I have earphones. They weren't called headphones, and they're called earphones.
Oh, in Europe, they
Uh,
were called earphones.
okay. So she's like, yeah, sure. So she's watching it, and then we kind of find out that um Jennifer played, Jennifer sleepwalks, and she's going through kind of the stuff, and she somehow witnesses a girl being murdered, but she's sleepwalking. Um, and she kind of just she sees all this stuff, and she wakes up in the forest, and then somehow Inga finds her in the woods. I'm assuming because he's not that far away from the school.
Right.
Um, and so she goes and meets Donald Pleasance, like, hey, I have this jacket. It came, belonged to my research assistant. And she's like, he's talking about like bugs. Like, I like bugs. Oh, sorry. There's a car scene in her car where she's being dropped off by like a publicist or someone, that's in charge of her. She's like, oh, that's a bee. Bees don't bother me. Bugs like me. They never sting me or attack me. So then Donald Pleasance is very surprised that she likes bugs and that they don't do anything to her, that she's able to somewhat control them, have like a telepathic link. And like immediately comes up with that conclusion within like 5 minutes of meeting her. Um, so she finds out that oh, she meets Inga. This is how she gets stuff for me and all that jazz. And she's like, oh, you should use these powers, blah blah blah. But anyway, she does end up returning to the school and like, okay, we're gonna do this EEG, and somehow she's like, I don't want this. I don't want your EEG. I don't know what this is supposed to do. What it's supposed to prove. And she gets kind of like sleepwalking is like see, acted like this very taboo thing to have happened to her, right? Like, oh, she's a sleepwalker. We have to figure out why and what's wrong with her. And then somehow the EEG like makes her flash back to the events of the murder. Like it rekindles something in her head,
Right.
which seemed very weird to me. Um, so yeah, but yeah, she leaves. Um, and then she was this when she tries talking to her, calling her dad to get the publicist. Was that later on?
No, yeah, at this point, because I think she would. At
Yeah,
this point, she decides that she just wants to get out of there.
right. I don't want to be here. I need to leave, but she can't get to her dad, so she calls Shapiro, her dad's attorney,
Yeah,
trying to get out of there.
Morris
Morris
Shapiro.
Shapiro, right? Um. Anyway, then the 14-year-old French girl finds the jacket, because he saw her. The person that's doing these murders saw Jennifer leave the house in that jacket. So he's like, okay, I know she saw me. I have this jacket. And then the 14-year-old girl goes on some date with some random guy, I feel like.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it was like her
Yeah. And
boyfriend or
yeah.
whatever, but he seemed like
And,
he was like 10 years older than she was.
right. Well, I mean, if she wants to lay in bed with, someone's dad who's clearly in his 30s or supposed to be in 30s or 40s at least.
Uh,
But she's wearing the same sweater or jacket, and so the killer mistakes her for it and kills her roommate. And then Jennifer kind of sleepwalks again and is led by a lightning bug.
yep.
She follows it, which has the weirdest glow on a lightning bug. I understand it's for effect, but yeah. And then she finds what a glove that has maggots on it. And then she decides to, hey, this is a clue. Let's not tell the cops.
Right. Like I said, all of these movies, like Argento just like cuts the police out of the story.
Yeah.
Like they're only
Um,
there incidentally.
correct. So she gives she befriends Donald Pleasance, like, hey, these are what they're great sarcophagus flies. These only appear on decaying human flesh. Um, he's like, well, that's weird because why would they be on the glove? And he's saying that the killer um, likes to keep the dead bodies very close to him. So like he kills them and then has their bodies and eventually disposes of the bodies at some later time. So they're already decayed by the time anyone finds them. And so somehow he's getting these fly maggots onto him. Um, it's like, okay, well, you're gonna have to use your kind of powers to do this. But anyway, she goes back to the school and then she gets tormented. Or she gets like a little training montage of how to control insects to harness her powers for good. She goes back to school and she's tormented for sleepwalking. And then she calls down a swarm of flies, like covering the school. And like the fan blowing on her, the lights, like very Carrie esque scene.
Yeah,
Um,
that's fair.
but she's like, oh, she's the devil. Because the devil is the Lord of the Flies. So like, okay, well, since she's the devil, she has to go to a mental hospital because that's going to fix everything. She's able to, and the weirdest scene ever, like So she is in a bed and she has like um an IV hooked up to her, and someone's like waiting for the loony bin to get to her, and like there's someone standing watching guard, and she pulls out crochet needles, and then within a minute she's like dead asleep.
Yep.
Yeah, right. She's
As he
all
did.
the time knitting, and she's like out, like no sound is waking her up. So she takes the drip needle out of her and kind of sneaks out. So then she, goes back to Donald Pleasance. He's like, okay, I want you to follow this fly and kind of like warg into it, right?
Oh, sure.
Something like that, right?
Mhm.
It's like, okay, well, she's like, it's a big area. He's like, well, we know it's in this area. And when the fly detects a dead body, it will immediately go to it. So make sure to follow it. Um, and then but she gets in there, she goes to like this old cottage. There's once again a hole, and she goes up to like a closet and starts following her. She's trying to figure it out, and there's a hole in the ground, or right, that she doesn't really notice right away. Um, and then we get a scene with like the caretaker of this place, and then he trying to figure out with like the real estate guy, like who the previous occupants are from the cop. Is the question. And he's like, oh, I don't know. Um, I think that's, and then she gets out of there.
Right.
Uh,
Well, yeah. Well, yeah. This is the cop that's asking questions.
yes, yeah, he's actually doing his job, which I'm surprised they're allowed to do that.
Well,
Uh,
yeah, but yeah, the next group of scenes, we'll see exactly what he accomplishes, which is nothing.
right.
But again, so that makes sense for Argento's police. So even if they
Yeah,
do show up, they don't do anything useful.
yeah. But yeah, it's the same cottage that was from earlier, I guess. Anyway, then we get a scene of Inga got out of the house and she's kind of just doing whatever, and then sees someone go into the house and she gets locked outside the house, and she's like trying to rip open the house and like wake up Donald Pleasance to alert that there's someone in the house. He's going down his wheelchair elevator, and there's someone just kind of standing there, stops the button, he shines his like laser into the eye so we can just see the eye. Um, he's like, before that, he's like, "That's what you get, for going outside, reprimanding the chimpanzee." Um, and then uh, he the wheelchair ramp kind of goes all the way down. He stabbed in the gut, and he's dead. Donald Pleasance is dead. Inga is able to get in there and kind of like calls with him, trying to take care of him, waking him up. Also, very interested in his wound in his gut, I would say.
Right.
Um, yeah. So let's see here. Oh, then she calls the lawyer again. It's like, you gotta take me back. Um, the lawyer talks to the cop uh to have her stay at his house, and then the detective cop who's actually investigating goes to some mental hospital where someone that was attacked by uh uh, ins- patient previously, and I would assume, would you assume impregnated?
Well, I don't think they knew about the impregnate. I knew that they knew about the rape part,
Yeah.
but I don't think they knew about the impregnant part. And I think
Okay.
that's how the climax happens.
Right. Um. So anyway, yeah. So the lady who was in charge of taking care of that brought her there originally. It's like, okay, you're in my stay. I'm in charge of you. Until you're able to get taken out here. Tomorrow, because she tries going to the airport, and like the flights aren't leaving, so she has to wait till like the following night to get out to fly back out to America. That's how she gets the assistant to take care of her. Goes, hey, son, come stay at my house, which is essentially a mansion. And she's like, wow, the mirror's covered. Oh, I have a son who doesn't like mirrors. So she's like, okay, here, take these pre- packaged pills. Take, two should, two is the recommended dose, but one should work. Just take them, and then she goes, okay, I'll get water myself. Uh, so she takes one and like immediately starts to throw up, and she's like, oh, this is poison. These are poison, which I don't understand how they would be poison when they were like, she like had to take them out of their package. So she starts throwing up and like she's pounding her, like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Um, is she knocked unconscious? She's knocked unconscious by the assistant. Um, so yeah, I don't remember she's knocked unconscious. And then the cop shows up, start questioning the assistant. Says that she was working at the mental hospital when she was raped, and then she imprisons the cop. Um, so essentially, she wakes up and she's like, what would you even call this? The basement, but what would you call the pit? Like a death pit?
I mean, yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's like a compost pile for people.
Right.
So, like, kind of. I don't know.
But she uh finds a cop kind of chained up. He's been tortured, a little bit. And she falls into the pool for a very long time, like trying to get out. She's covered in just gray water and decaying matter and
Yeah, and
maggots.
she's wearing all white.
Yes, that's a very common theme when women go in the water in Argento's movies.
But yeah, in this one, the continuity guy was taking a nap because, like,
Right,
the minute she gets out of there, she's clean. She's a little wet, but she's totally clean.
right. Um. So yeah, essentially, the assistant comes out is like, haha, it's kind of me, and she starts mocking her, and then the cop is able to escape and seemingly kill the assistant, right? Like, I feel like stabs her in the face a few times, at least.
Um, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
she definitely gets
yeah,
injured. Yeah,
but she seems to be out. So then she's going through kind of the basement a little bit, and she's like, "Oh, I hear a child," and she's like, "Oh, it's the son," and she's like, "Oh, you don't have to be afraid of the mirror. Let me take off this drapery from the mirror so you can see yourself. We can get out of here." And she turns around. He's deformed, and I, I don't know with what. Kind of just chases her. He's like, "Oh, I'm gonna have this." Like, "Oh, you're essentially the kid's evil." I don't want to say evil, but just dangerous. She gets onto the boat, but the kid somehow is able to get onto her and tries attacking her with a spear.
yeah, it's like a spear that you have to put together like socket extenders.
Yeah,
I don't know what that was all about, but yeah.
no idea. Um, so essentially, but he also causes, like, he pierces the boat engine and starts leaking fuel. She's able to use her powers and essentially kill the child. Um, and she is, oh, the boat's leaking. She tries to start it, she can't. She gets out of the boat catches fire, and then the lawyer shows up somehow. It's like, oh, I'm here, and then boom, decapitated
Right, yeah,
with a piece
immediately.
of sheet metal.
Right.
Just like one quick swipe, head gone.
Right. It's like I don't know what kind of strength it would take to like decapitate someone in one hit with a piece of sheet metal, but
She, that
she's been
that's
working out.
superhuman
Yeah,
strength.
she's
Yeah.
been working out.
Oh, and then something that comes into play, when after, Inga found Donald Pleasant's dead, she goes to the garbage and just happens to find, like, a straight razor in the garbage and, like, a milk container to drink on it. She takes the switchblade. Then Inga comes and saves the day and starts, killing her with the straight razor, and then they hug. And then the Inga, the chimpanzee, and Jennifer hug. It's over.
Yeah. Now, interesting bit of trivia there is that the monkey that was actually the monkey's hand with that straight razor on her face.
Was it?
Yes. And she actually got like severely injured, even though that straight razor was blunted. It was obviously not a sharp straight razor. It was blunted, but because the monkey was hitting her so hard with it, she actually got hurt like pretty badly. And Jennifer Connelly also said that that monkey was like very aggressive
Huh.
towards her, and like there's a like after something happened that the monkey like bit off like part of her finger,
Oh.
and like ever since that point the monkey was like really aggressive towards her, and they had to use a body double for a lot of her scenes with the monkey because the monkey would not calm down when she was around for some reason.
Interesting.
Yeah, there's also a weird story of like the monkey ran away
Huh.
and it was living in the forest like outside of where they were shooting for like 3 days, and they finally convinced it to come out with like some food like 3 days later.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah.
So we'll start with first thoughts is, this is the most Americanized version, I guess, of one of these movies that we've seen so far. Uh, Donald Pleasance had a very poor Scottish accent that he just gave up, like, after saying I'm Scottish.
Yeah, I'm
He was
pretty
done.
sure yeah, I'm pretty sure he tried for a little bit and he was just like, "Nah."
I'm too old for this.
Yeah, and everybody's just like, "It's fine. It was terrible anyway. Just don't worry about it."
But it's interesting seeing, because the first thing I probably saw Jennifer Connelly in actually was Labyrinth and then Rocketeer. So it's interesting seeing her kind of like at the start of her career here. Um, but I mean, I've heard of this movie, obviously, and I have this on Laserdisc, and I heard so much about it, but I never watched it until this week. Um, I still think it was a pretty decent movie. It was more of it was less of a I guess still kind of a whodunit, but more horror, less kind of a whodunit with like some supernatural elements, which kind of rare for Argento
Yeah, yeah, I
in
know.
these type of movies.
Yeah, it's essentially like if you take like a kind of upbeat sci-fi movie and mix it with an Argento horror movie is
Yeah,
essentially what this ended up being.
yeah, but I mean, it's still overall pretty good movie. It's definitely this one was I'm pretty sure released in America more than any other Argento movie that I've seen.
Well, it was, but it was released as Creepers.
Right,
So, so yeah,
right.
it was released as Creepers, and from what I understand, it did pretty well. I mean, I don't remember seeing it at all, but yeah,
No,
it was released as Creepers here.
yeah, but I mean, it's still for me to be able to find it in the wild on Lasers meant that it came with English and it was did
Well,
well
to
enough
be
in
fair,
America.
you didn't find it.
Oh, you did,
That's right. You're
but
welcome.
still in the wild. If I didn't find it in the wild, if you didn't find it in the wild, I probably wouldn't have it. But no, but it's still decently. We'll get into your. I know your downs, your low points of the movie, but overall, what did you think of this movie? Was this your first time too?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, no, yeah. This is the first time watching it. I mean, overall, it was good. I mean, the again, there's the his goofy music choices. Goblin is technically part of this one, but it's really only when the French girl is watching the TV.
Hmm.
The music that's in the background is like old, kind of recycled, like Day of the Dead stuff or Dawn of the Dead stuff that they did. They didn't do anything original for this movie, but that was the only time they were in there. But they did a lot more like um, like famous for the time music. That's why there's like actual like Iron Maiden music and stuff in it. So
Right.
I mean that was it was interesting. Like I said, I don't think I like it quite as much as the other ones. Bugs are definitely a part of that, but yeah,
Yeah.
it wasn't bad.
But you knew about the bugs before you got.
Yes,
You're at least warned ahead of time.
correct.
Okay. Highlights, the music was pretty good. For the I think the acting was still pretty good too. I mean, it's still Donald Pleasance being Donald Pleasance, but you know, he was a better child psychologist than he was in Halloween. This
Oh
one.
Jesus. Yeah, I mean at least he again. I don't know. Okay. Um. Yeah, no, he's fine. I mean, at least he like told them some bug facts. Like yeah, you do that
Yeah,
instead of being the child psychologist. It's just like, yeah, I am a licensed child psychologist, and that's an evil child.
right.
That's not a diagnosis, dude. That's not how your job works. You
He's
can't just say that's an evil kid, kill him. You can't do
definitely more professional in his
that.
field of
Yes, exactly,
expertise in this one.
exactly.
I said, but like I said, highlights definitely music, the acting, spot on. What about you?
Yeah, I mean the music's good. Like I said, it's not quite as good as some of the other ones, just because I think that's just Goblin took like a back seat here. And it was
Yeah,
more the other stuff, but it's definitely the same kind of thing, like the character is doing their normal everyday kind of activities, and all of a sudden Iron Maiden kicks in, and you're like, okay, something bad is going to happen, but they're continuing to like act completely normally for like another few seconds before something actually happens.
right.
So yeah, I mean the music is like telegraphing what's happening, but yeah, it was interesting. I mean they could have used another song besides the Iron Maiden song. They used it like way too many times.
Yes.
But yeah, it was a bright spot overall. And again, it's interesting to see Jennifer Connelly this early in her career. Like obviously she's not Jennifer Connelly yet. She's still like a 15-year-old kid essentially.
Right.
But yeah, it's interesting seeing her this young, and in this stage of her career. It's fun.
Yeah. I mean, we'll just roll into your low point. We can say, you can say it.
Um, well, yeah, we'll say again some of the music I didn't like.
Hmm.
um, the monkey. Like,
Yeah.
what is the point of the monkey? Why is there a monkey in this movie? You know what I mean? There is no point for a monkey being there. I don't get it. Like, and I guess Argento was like upset because people were like seeing the monkey and in the scenes and stuff, and they were like laughing because it's a monkey, right? And he was upset. He's like, "No, this is serious. This is a serious scene. You can't laugh at the monkey." It's like it's a monkey, dude. Like
Yeah.
monkeys do stuff to make us laugh. That's like, yeah, I don't know. It's some kind of like reptile brain thing. You laugh at monkeys, right? That's
Right.
well, he was like all upset about it. It's like, okay, I get you're upset about that. Why do you need the monkey in the movie? What are you? Why? What is it even there for? I didn't get the whole monkey thing. I mean, yes, I understand it's part of the story, but like it could have easily been another human character. It didn't need to
Yes.
be a monkey character at all. Um, that yeah. I mean, of course, bugs.
There's a lot of
There's a
bugs.
lot of bugs. They were all over the place. They were crawling on people. They were all over the ground. There was like, there's like, I mean, there's freaking scorpions and I mean, all kinds of stuff in all these little like tubs. Like, dude, like, yeah, the guy studies bugs doesn't mean he has to cover his freaking house in bugs.
Correct.
Jesus. And he's in a freaking
Yeah.
wheelchair. How you can't take care of all these bugs? They're probably crawling all over his house. It's disgusting.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I bugs don't really bother me that much. The monkey, yes, that is it makes no sense. And realistically, like, did she have some sort of powers to put the person watching her like instantly to like a deep sleep that's not being woken up from?
I don't know. I think they just like put a person who like had worked like a double shift and were like, "Oh, you're good to
Something.
work a third one, right? Yeah, we just need you to watch her. Can you handle that?" Sure.
and
and
then
just
boom.
passed out immediately. Yeah, it was like not even 30 seconds. Like I don't even think they got one stitch done with
No,
their knitting needles before they passed out.
not at all.
So I don't
Yeah.
know. Maybe yeah. Maybe there's like some kind of sleepy bug that she had go in her ear or something. I don't know.
I, I don't know. I was watching like, all right, did she do something? Did I miss something? Or did
No.
she get like the world's sleepiest person?
Yeah, they just said yeah, sometimes when, people get the job that they're, like, least likely to be able to do, I think that's what that was.
Maybe, maybe. Okay, so let's get into our number of ceremonial daggers out of 10. Um, this wasn't as good. Like, this is probably I don't want to say worse because this isn't a bad movie, but like the least good so far that we've watched of Argento. Um, and I'm gonna go down to a 7 ceremonial daggers out of 10. How about you?
Yeah, I'll agree. Yeah, it's probably my least favorite of the ones I've seen so far. And I will have to give it a 6.75 ceremonial daggers out of 10 because I don't wanna watch it again.
No matter how much speed you had, because you probably be like, "There's bugs on me."
Yeah, if there's unless there's a reason for me to watch this again, I don't want to. But it's not yeah, it's a decent movie overall. It's just yeah, it's a
Yeah,
movie that I don't necessarily wanna watch again.
correct. We watched it. I'm glad we watched it. It's just
Mhm.
because it's still a good movie.
Yes.
But it felt very different from the rest of his works,
Yes.
honestly.
Yes.
So, all right, why don't you bring us home with the last one?
Sure. So we're going for Opera, which came out in 1987.
Yes.
Which a lot of people say is Argento's last film in his like golden era. But essentially, Opera opens up with a kind of a rehearsal of Macbeth as an opera. I didn't know Macbeth was an opera, but apparently they made an opera version of Macbeth. So
Sure.
I'm
I,
not
I I don't think they made this version of it. But
well. I mean, I'm just saying, like, I'm not an opera fan, so I did not know that. That's interesting. But yeah, so yeah, it's basically they're doing a opera version of Macbeth. And there's like a very famous opera singer that's supposed to be like Lady Macbeth, the main character.
yeah.
And she is upset because they're using like real crows in the production, and the real crows are cawing while she's singing, and she says it's very very distracting, and she gets she turns has a diva moment, and she just like storms out, and the camera kind of follows her. It's kind of her POV of her leaving the scene, and we're kind of introduced to the director and her agents and all these other kind of characters in the movie as they're like trying to convince her to stay and calm her down. And she walks out in the front of the theater and gets hit by a car. And because she's hit by a car, that means that her understudy now has to come in and be Lady Macbeth. And the understudy is essentially the main character. She's very young. I mean, I don't early 20s. I don't think they say exactly how old she is, but
Correct.
she's early 20s, and like she even herself is like, I'm too young to play Lady Macbeth. Like, she's supposed to be like a seasoned, woman. Like I'm too young. And they're like, oh, you'll be fine. So they basically, yeah, she comes in, and they make her do it. She's extremely nervous about doing it. And she sings and she does a fantastic job, and everybody loves her, right?
Yep.
And when they're towards the end of the opera, somebody, Argento's traditional killer of, we see through his POV and we only see gloved hands, right?
Which, by the way, are Argento's hands in every one.
Every single one, yes. Every single one that has gloved hands, those are Argento's hands, yes.
Yes.
It's just like in Tarantino's movies. If somebody is touching a foot in a scene, it is his hands. Um,
Well, yeah.
Also, like yeah, in Inglorious Bastards, when the lady gets choked out, that's actually him choking her out.
Of course it is.
Yeah, and from what I understand, he actually like choked her to unconsciousness. But It was by her request, like she wanted to do it. Like he didn't make her do it; she wanted to do it. Anyway, sorry, sidetrack. Yeah, so this stage hand person, and we're not really told who this person is. The stage hand person like catches him like looking at her singing and is like, "Hey, you're not supposed to be up here," and then just like kills him on a coat hook. Is that what that was? It's like a
The
coat hook or
world's
like
sharpest coat
yeah,
hook,
it's
yeah.
like, what is this thing supposed to be? But yeah, like stabs his head on his coat hook a whole bunch of times, and then just throws him over the balcony. And then, oh no, he just hangs him up on the coat hook and then knocks some lights off the balcony. And the
Right.
lights like explode and spark everywhere, and everybody like goes oh, and the whole thing, the whole opera stops. And they're all like, "Oh, it's fine, it's fine. It's just some lights. It'll be fine." And obviously, there's people up there like reeling in the lights from where the guy is dead, hanging on the wall, and no one notices apparently at all. So she goes back. She finishes up the opera to a standing ovation. Everybody loves her. So she is now going to, be a huge star, right? So yeah, basically they say, yeah, oh, there was a murder up there, but it was just some stagehand. Who cares? And like nobody is bothered by this at all. They're all like just excited that this is a hit, right? So everybody comes to her dressing room to kind of congratulate her. One of the cops who is there to investigate the death comes and gives her a flower, and she's like, "Oh boy, it's my first fan. Gave me a flower." And he's like, "Oh no, I'm a cop actually." Then she got all upset. She's like, "Oh, he's not here because he's a fan of me. He's just some cop." And her like agent friend lady is like, "Oh, they can be both," which is true.
Yeah.
So anyway, so she kind of hits it off with the stage manager guy. Um, and they end up going to this, big party together. And then she hangs up her costume before they go to this big party. And then the wardrobe lady, I guess, brings it into the kind of prop room and sets the thing out like, okay, I got to fix this tomorrow. And then she goes to the party too. And then we see, as the party happens off scene, but as that's happening, the killer guy or person or thing, whatever,
Yep.
comes into the room and starts like cutting apart the dress that she wears. It's like a dress with like a whole bunch of like gaudy costume jewelry hanging off of it for the opera. And he like cuts it all apart. Like he's very, very angry about it. And then while he's doing that, the crows end up breaking out of their cage and attacking him or them, whatever. And he fights back and like kills like three of them, and then the rest of them are just like flying around and stuff. And he eventually leaves. Um, so there's like a weird scene where after the party, the you know understudy lady, I can't remember her name. What was her name? I don't know. It
Uh,
doesn't matter, I guess. So she goes to back to this stage manager guy's, you know,
oh, Betty,
Betty.
Betty.
That's right. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
just say it was a weird name for an Italian lady to have, Betty. So she goes back to the stage manager's house. They end up boning, and then they have like the weirdest like post-coital conversation I've ever heard, where she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm so bad. I just can't get this right," or something. Like, and he's like, "Oh no, you were fine." But it's like, "What are you? What? What kind of conversation is this?" But anyway, so there he's like, "Oh, whatever. I'm gonna go get something to drink. You just hang out here." So he goes to get something to drink, and as she's just like hanging out, the killer guy pops out, um, ties her to a pillar in the room because, of course, this is like the stage manager guy has this like gargantuan cavernous apartment that has like 30-foot cathedral ceilings and like all of these like Roman pillars in the middle of it and stuff. Anyway, so she gets tied to one of these like Roman pillars. He gags her and he puts these bizarre things on her eyes. That's like a big piece of scotch tape with like a bunch of needles in it. And he sticks it to her bottom eyelid and essentially so she can't close her eyes. Like if she closes her eyes, it'll stab into the needles and make her bleed.
Right.
So he forces her to watch. And so the guy comes back in, sees her like tied up, and doesn't think anything's wrong, just walking towards her like, "What are you doing?" And so the killer guy comes out and stabs him to death brutally. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like he stabs him in his hand a bunch of times, and like, I mean, it's like it's a bad death. It's a bad death. And he goes down, and she has to watch the whole thing. And then after he's dead, he walks over to her and he cuts the rope that she's tied up with, and he leaves. And so she just like runs out. And as is in all Argento movies, she doesn't tell the police. She doesn't tell anyone at all. She basically is like tries to figure out what to do, and she's like hanging outside in the rain. And then she meets up with the director guy who just happened to be, I don't know, driving around in the middle of the night. And he's like, "Oh, you look like something's wrong. Are you okay?" And she's like, "No, you know." Doesn't tell him what's going on, but just like, "No, I'm afraid. You got to come with me." It's like,
Yeah.
okay. So they go up to her apartment. They're just hanging out, and he keeps asking her, like, "What is wrong with you? What is going on?" Um, and so eventually she tells him that, like, "Oh, this guy, killer guy, forced me to watch the murder of the stage manager." And he's like, "Huh, that's interesting. Anyway, you good? Because I got to go back home." And he was asking, he's like, "Well, I got somebody waiting for me, but if you want me to stay, I will." Like that kind of thing where he's definitely does not want to stay at all, but he's like, "Well, I will if you ask me to." And she's like, "No, no, no, I'll be fine." So, so he leaves and goes back home again. Neither one of them calls the police or anything. And she just decides to go back to work the next day. So she goes back to work. And then she's, obviously working with the wardrobe lady who's like, "Yeah, somebody like, cut your dress all up. So we gotta like fix it." So she's like hanging out with her in this like huge room. Like if she's like one lady doing all the wardrobe, I don't know why she needs this giant room with all these sewing machines. Um,
Well, she was like an assistant one. She wasn't the dress designer. She said,
oh whatever.
yeah,
I
something
don't
like
know
that.
why
I don't
anybody
know.
needed all that room, but anyway.
Right.
So she is like, "Okay, we got to fix it." And she's like, I don't know, cutting off the jewels and sewing back on other ones, whatever. And she's like, "Oh, you got to stay here because you got to try this on because I have to change so much that it might change the fit. We have to make sure it still fits you." So she's like going back and forth. She's like, looking for, she's like this gold, bracelet thing that's hanging off of it that's got like an old kind of worn out date on it. And there she's trying to figure it out. He's like, "Oh, I need a magnifying glass to see this. Like, let me go find a magnifying glass." So she's looking all over the place. And she goes in this other room, looking for the magnifying glass. She finds a magnifying glass and she's like, "Oh, look, it's like a date or something." Um, and then she comes back in the room, and um, Betty is now tied up in like one of these like glass display cases. Again, tied up, gagged with the tape and needles on her eyes. And he again murders the wardrobe lady. She manages to fight back a little bit, at least. But yeah, again, she's still brutally murdered. Um, I mean, she gets stabbed like a lot.
Yeah.
And she just has to watch the whole thing. And she, like all this murder happens. And again, after the murder is done, he opens up the glass case, cuts the rope, and then leaves. And so yeah, she comes out this time and she's like, she goes back to the director guy, is essentially like, "Oh yeah, he just killed the wardrobe lady." And he's like, "Oh wow, that sucks."
Yep.
So yeah, we're still gonna have a show tomorrow. Again, and it's like, "Oh, okay, that doesn't seem like a great idea, but sure." Um, I'm trying to think of where did it go after that? Um,
Well,
okay, no, that's
yeah.
okay. Now she goes back to her apartment, and now at this point in time, she actually does tell the police.
Right.
And so the police, the guy, the one who was like her kind of sort of fan in the beginning, basically says, "Okay, well, I'm gonna go like try to find this killer. I'm gonna leave one of my guys here. to protect you. Here's the guy's name. Only let this guy in. He's going to watch over you until I get back. And she calls her friend slash agent to come and sit with her, because she's scared. So the cop guy comes up, he whatever says the name that, she was told to wait for. He comes in, but she like just put eye drops in her eyes so she can't see him. So it's like all she can see is a big blur. So he just kind of goes in this other room and sits there, and then her friend comes in, and they're discussing the whole thing, and then they kind of start thinking like, hey, like, how do we know that this guy is the real cop? Because there's a cop downstairs that said he was the same guy asking me a whole bunch of questions. She's like,
Right.
so how do we know which one is the real cop? And they start like freaking out, like, oh, what do we do? Which way do we go? Like, we can't stay here because this one's here. We can't go out because the other guy's out in the hallway. What do we do? So they decide to just like grab a knife and go hide in the kitchen. So they're hiding in there. The one guy that was in the apartment, you know, basically leaves because somebody calls the room and he talks to him and he goes, "Oh no, something happened," and he leaves. So when they come out again, the they close and lock the door, and the one lady's like looking. Somebody else comes back saying it's him again, and the one like her friend lady's like looking through the peephole saying like, "Hey, we don't know it's you. Show us some ID." And he's like trying to show the ID, and she's like, "I can't see it." And he's like, "Look, here's my gun." And she's like, "Well, yeah, anybody can have a gun," and then he just shoots through the peephole and just takes her out, just like right through her eyeball, just dead.
Yep.
So she is now like freaking out, like she doesn't know what to do. So she runs back in her room, and the power is out at this point in time. And she somehow turns her radio on. Like they show her like hitting a switch in the back that turns it on. Like I don't know if it's got a battery backup or something.
Maybe.
I don't know what was going on. I'm like, okay, the power's out. Why did I don't know. Maybe I don't know. I wasn't big in stereo equipment back then. Maybe there was some kind of battery backup. I don't know. So she's like trying to figure out what to do, and she's like, "Oh, I know. I'll pretend like I jumped out the window." So she like ties a sheet to the window and hangs it out, and then like throws a pillow down, which explodes. Which I don't know how pillows explode, but it explodes. And then she like goes and hides behind a curtain. So the killer guy comes in, looks and sees, oh, like you must have jumped out the window. So he runs out. And then she basically finds out that like this little girl that lived in the apartment next door has been spying on her through her vents. And now that she sees the killer is gone, she opens the vent and she's like, "Come on, get in here. We got to go." So they go into the vent and they crawl through, and they go to her apartment. And then the killer manages to find out where she went. So he crawls into the vent as well. And she gets into the other apartment, and the mom is just upset that she's there and just tells her to leave immediately. So she does. And that just kind of uh, ends at that point to where she gets away and she gets back to the um the opera because she didn't know where else to go. She's like, this is the only place I feel safe. This is my home, is the opera, so I want to stay here. And the director guy is there, and he's like, "Oh, that's cool. Yeah, you can just like sleep here in your dressing room or whatever. That's fine. But I got a plan. Like, we're still gonna have the show tomorrow, but I have a plan on how we're gonna figure out who the killer is." And she's like, "Well, how do you know he's gonna be at the show?" He's like, "Oh, trust me, he'll be there." Okay, so we cut to the show, and she's singing, on the stage. Basically, in the middle of the song, they throw the cage of ravens out through the like whatever the backdrop is. They throw
Yeah.
the cage of ravens out there and open it up. And the plan is that these ravens, because they already had an interaction and an attack with this killer, they're going to know who he is and they're going to go right to him and attack him. So of course the plan, goes off without a hitch. The birds are flying all over the place and they attack the person in the crowd who the killer is, and it is the cop guy who is like literally in like two scenes
Yep.
up until this point and had like maybe 3 lines. I mean, it was like nothing. There's no way you could figure out that this guy was the killer, but now he is. And so the birds pluck out his eye, but he's still going. And there's like a bizarre scene of like they show the birds like chewing at his eye, and then like they keep
Yeah.
like swallowing it and then spitting it back up. It's weird and gross. But anyway, so yeah, they're like running. She's like running and trying to get away from this guy. He ends up catching up to her in like I don't know the records room. There's a bunch of paper everywhere. And he's basically says like, "Oh, I don't want to hurt you. I just want to like kill myself near you."
Right.
So he ties her up, but this time he doesn't want her to watch. This time he wants to blindfold her because he just wants to end everything. So he covers himself and everything in the room, sorry, in gasoline. And then he lights himself on fire and lights everything else in the room on fire. And so she manages to escape, get out of the thing. Well, actually, she shoots him because he gives her a gun and he's like, "Go ahead and shoot." He like tells her like, "Okay, up, down, left, right, okay, perfect, shoot me." And then when she shoots, apparently that was supposed to have killed him, and she manages to get out by shooting the rope that's tying her, so she can get out. And everything's on fire at this point, so she just barely gets out of the room. And I think the
Yes.
director guy helps her, whatever. And so they're all like, happy now. We cut to I don't know months later or something.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and she's like sharing a little cottage in the middle of nowhere with the director guy who is filming a fly tied to a string. Or something. I don't know what he's doing, but he's filming a fly tied to a string with his like home video camera. So she goes outside to like enjoy um nature, whatever. I don't know what she's doing. And we see like two German shepherds like run by in the distance. And then we see the director guy is watching TV, and they basically find out that um, when they finally sifted through all the wreckage of the opera, they found out that what they thought was that guy's body was really just a mannequin, and that guy was not. They didn't find his remains in the opera at all. So now he's at large, and he apparently escaped and is dangerous and at large. Um, and so he like screams to her like, "Hey, they haven't caught the guy. We have to be careful." And I think something happens to where he's like, he's already here.
Yeah. Somehow he's already there.
Yeah, I don't remember. Something happened where he knew that he was already there. Anyway, so she like looks up, see the killer is like comes out running after her. And so they're like chasing each other around. The grass. The director guy comes out, tackles him to try to save her. He gets stabbed a whole bunch of times. I'm guessing he dies. They're not really clear on that, but whatever.
Pretty sure he's dead.
Yeah, he gets stabbed a lot. And then she's like running into the forest, and then all of a sudden, like I don't even know, like 100 cops pop up.
Uzis. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like we're talking like 100 cops, like dressed like soldiers, like pop out of the woodwork everywhere.
All
There's
start
like
pointing the guns at his
right, yeah, there's like
head.
helicopters and stuff. Yeah, there's like they knock the guy on the ground and they like literally like are digging the gun into his forehead like as hard as
Yeah.
they can. Anyway, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we knew you were out here. We knew he would come and get you, so we sent everybody here." She's like, "Oh, I know. I saw your dogs."
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Why did you run at the dogs immediately then? So anyway, yeah, so he dies and then they're safe. And there was a weird kind of I don't even know when to bring this up because it's so bizarre and
I don't think he
goofy.
died. He just got captured.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the weird backstory as to like why he did it. It was
Yeah.
like it's like piecemeal throughout the thing, but it doesn't make any sense. Even at the very end when they tell you everything, it still doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But apparently, the Betty's mom was like a psychopath. Like she was a singer too, but she was like a sadistic singer. Like she loved to control people. And apparently the cop guy was like one of her like servants, like boy toy servants
As a teenager.
as a teenager. And like he always wanted to like, make love to her and she never let him because she was just like, loved the control aspect of it. And so he was like obsessed with Betty because Betty looked and sounded exactly like her mom. And so he was like finally going to be able to to make love to her because he could make love to his daughter.
Well, also she was also her mom was telling him to kill young girls too.
Right.
Yeah.
Again, it's the whole backstory doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I
No.
understand they have to give him something as to why he's doing it, but like, yeah, like that whole backstory doesn't make a lot of sense. That's why I didn't want to put too much of it in there because like I just get lost. I figured I'd
Right.
just put like an epilogue at the end of like what it is because it doesn't make sense as to why he was doing it. But yeah, essentially he was doing it to like get back at her mom, but also like live out his fantasies with her mom through her.
Also, she frees a lizard at the end and tells it to go free for no
Yes.
reason. And that's how the movie ends.
Right. But it was like a lizard that was just sitting there with the stick on it. Like, lady, I'm a
You're
lizard.
trapped.
Yeah, lady, I'm a
Yeah.
lizard. I think I could get a stick off of me.
Yeah.
But
uh,
yeah, that's it.
what I mean, obviously new to you as well. What were your first thoughts on this?
Um, I liked it. I mean, it was. I think the kills were a little bit more brutal in this one than they
Yes.
were in most of the other movies. Like, there's usually like one pretty brutal kill in each one, but this one it's like they all felt pretty brutal. Like there was like a like extended like bloody stabbing scenes in like every single one of them. Um, but yeah, I thought
Well,
it was
the
a little
this
bit more brutal, a little bit more harsh.
yeah. Yeah, that the seamstress swallowed that date chain and like he carves it out of her neck, like
Right.
cuts her open and pulls it out of her neck.
Yeah, like I said, he's like stabbing her for like a long time. It's like
Yeah.
it's like uncomfortably long. It's like what is happening?
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely more brutal. And another thought was, all right, so they made Macbeth an opera, but there's plane wreckages
Well, that's like,
in the play.
yeah, but that was they talked a little bit about that. It was like people were like the things they didn't like was like his direction and the weird design that he did with it. But people do that all the time. Like if you
Well, he
look
was
at
a
like
yeah,
like modern interpretations of Shakespeare, like they put him in modern clothes. Like look at Romeo and Juliet,
right,
the one with DiCaprio and Claire Danes. Like there
right,
was like guns and stuff that was set in like the modern-ish day. It's again, but they still had the same speaking, right? They had the same
right.
lines and all that. It was just they put it in a modern thing. So that's not anything new. People always do that to try to like keep it relevant. So that doesn't surprise me at all that they would do that.
Well, and he said that the director was like a horror movie guy before this play.
Right, right.
No, I mean, I mean, music. Other than the opera music, I don't necessarily care for, but the other music was still spot on.
Yeah, no, it's definitely good.
and and having watched the previous three movies, I'm like, okay, when's she gonna die and the guy gonna take over as the protagonist?
Yeah, right. No, yeah, this one actually stuck with the same protagonist through most of it. Surprising.
And the killer didn't die. Like the cops actually arrested him, and I was very surprised by
Well, yeah, but yeah, again,
that.
the only time the cops were involved was because he was the bad guy. That's the only
I
reason
know.
why he was there. But otherwise, like she didn't even tell people about the first two murders.
He's dead.
Right.
What
It's
you can
like
do about it?
what?
Nothing.
Yeah, nothing. I'm just gonna go home. Like what
Yeah.
is what? But again, I
Yeah.
don't know. It's a common thing in Argento's. I just don't think Argento likes cops.
Yeah, very fair assessment.
Right.
What are your highlights of this movie?
Highlights. Again, I'm gonna say like I liked how brutal and harsh this one was, and like it.
Yeah.
The kills were like just savage in this one. They didn't pull any punches in this one. It was I felt like it was kind of the peak of the kills so far.
Yeah.
And also, there was a Rickroll in this movie.
Was there?
Yeah, it was when the director guy was talking to his like actual girlfriend. They had music on in the background.
Yeah.
Yep. Rick Astley was playing.
Oh, that's right. They mentioned it too.
Right. So, yeah, but, yeah, I would say the Rickroll appearance was fun because, again, this is '87. That's the year it
Right.
came out, so that
Yeah.
was fun.
Yeah, I found it very, very interesting. Number 1, giant vents that a grown woman and a child are able to go side by side and crawl through for air conditioning. That is a very poor, HVAC system there.
Okay, well, yeah, she was also a tiny woman.
Yeah. Uh,
She was like a 100-pound woman. She was little
yeah.
bitty.
But yeah, I mean, I definitely agree the kills were definitely more brutal. And I found it very interesting that on her mixer or her system, right? Her sound system, that CD came up.
Yep. And she actually had a CD that she was playing,
I go,
which in 1987 meant she had some big money.
that's like huge ass apartment, top of the line sound system.
Right. Well, to be fair, she's an opera singer. Like, I guess I could see you if you're gonna spend a lot of money on something, it's probably gonna be music stuff.
Right.
So, I mean, I guess that's fair. But yeah, I mean, we're talking a CD player in 1987. That's a lot of money.
It was probably $1,000 then in that time
I wouldn't
frame
doubt it.
of money.
I would not
So we're
doubt it.
talking about like $5,000 now,
Right.
probably.
It's crazy.
Um, but I mean, yeah, the attention to detail was pretty good, and we know that Fulci is more of the eye guy, but there was especially like the needles to the eye that was very Fulci esque when she's being captured the entire time, so she wouldn't look away.
Yeah.
Obviously, she blinked because there was blood on the needles.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's like,
Um,
yeah, they're definitely like, yeah, of course, well, your eyes are going to try to close. I mean, like, you try to
right,
blink, that's like a, involuntary.
right, right. But yeah, I mean, I felt like it did capture all that stuff pretty well. So,
Right.
what about low points for you?
Low points of the damn birds. They were so freaking loud, and they were like, there was so many scenes of just the birds going, "Ah, ah, ah," the whole time. It's like, "Shut up, we get it. Understand." Like, I totally felt the diva lady in the beginning when she's like, "Shut these damn birds up." I'm like, "Yes, please shut the birds up."
Yeah.
I probably would have left too. Yeah, and then like I think it was just unnecessary for the guy to like stab the birds. Like they had like these bizarre scenes of like stabbing birds. I'm like, why? What is the point of that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. It felt like, all of a sudden Argento is like, I got animal money. I'm gonna
Right.
put animals in all my stuff.
Oh yeah, I don't. I forgot to talk about in Deep Red the weird songbird murder moment
Yeah.
where she literally killed a songbird with a knitting needle because she was
Yep.
scared of it.
Yes.
Dear Lord.
Yeah,
But yeah,
you
no.
got animal money.
Right. Yeah, so, yeah, the birds were annoying, the murder of the birds was unnecessary, and also, I'm just not a big fan of opera,
Nope.
so, there's a whole lot of it in this movie, which is kind of annoying. I mean, again, that's the movie was great. I'm not saying it was bad at all, I'm just saying, like, a little less opera or turn it down a little bit would have been, fantastic.
Yes. I found it very weird that, all that kerfuffle with the lights happened. And people are like, all right, no, the show's going on. Don't investigate anything about this. It's fine.
Right. Well, I'm saying like there was a guy clearly up there
Yeah.
pulling the lights back up by their wire to the place where they fell from, which the guy
Yes.
was hanging dead like 2 feet away from him, and
Yes.
nobody said nothing.
Right.
I
Yeah.
don't know.
That was weird.
I think the Argento movies take place in like an alternate universe where the police are like even worse than they are in our world, and like so many people die all the time that just don't really care. They're just not bothered by it.
Yeah. All right. So, how many ceremonial daggers out of 10 do you give this movie?
This one I will give 8.5 ceremonial daggers out of 10.
You think it
Uh,
was the best one of the bunch?
yeah, I think it was the best one out of these four. Yeah, I don't think it's the best Argento movie. but I think it's the
No,
best one out of these four.
no. I mean, I agree. I think a solid 8.5 is in place. Like I said, opera is not our type of thing, but when it wasn't opera music, it was still pretty damn good music.
Oh yeah, no, there was there's definitely the Goblin soundtrack as there normally is, and that was great. It was just there was just a lot of opera, which again, the movie is about an opera, so yes, of course they're going to.
Right. No, yeah, it definitely he had animal money and he had a budget to make you feel every kill
Yeah, like
like
I
he's
said, it
never had
was
before.
it was it was interesting.
Yeah, cool. Why don't you end us out here, sir?
All right, next week, prepare to squirm, prepare to be uncomfortable as we
Yeah.
dive into some choice 70s raw films, including I Spit on Your Grave, The Last House on Your Left, Don't Go in the Basement, and Axe. And remember, we watch bad movies so you don't have to.
All right, so this has been Graveyard saying, "Have you checked on the children?"
This is Salem saying, Long live the new flesh.
Good night.
Good night.